On a large billboard on the wall of a giant building, a very striking advertising videotron can be seen. You can see a very eye-catching virtual woman with very trendy makeup and neon green hair. She is the mascot of a virtual reality game called Ripple. With her cute style, she said, "We understand that you must be very bored with just the same game on your computer. Are you a computer amateur or tech noob? Viewers are still playing computer games that aren't even fun and don't even seem real? Or maybe the people you've dated online aren't as attractive as their social media counterparts." Now, no one needs to worry because here, all elements have been integrated into a game and also into the community to become very Hyun-So from a fantasy world. After all, you definitely want to dive into the fairy tale of your dreams, right? Those who are not available in real life, we will make it happen here. A real game that will give you a very realistic virtual world rather than reality itself. This attractive offer is called Ripple. Do they want to see Red Rose? Then you can meet Red Rose here. Come on, follow right now. A boy is seen standing in the street. He is wearing a large black bag and has black eye bags under his eyes. His name is Jang Hyun-So, and he is a high school student. Since 2 years ago, this game called Ripple has managed to spread around the world and change the era. The era where everyone, regardless of age or gender, played Ripples. But Hyun-So doesn't think Ripple is special. He finds it very ordinary because in any case, Ripple's essence and tendencies are very unhealthy and cost money. Hyun-So is fed up, even though he doesn't play it. He even understands how this game develops because everyone in his school always talks about Ripple. Even they are standing in line just to buy the game. And someone said that yesterday they got into the gold level Pyrini in the game. Some people want to trade, and others boast that they have reached a place where their friends have not reached that area in the game. They are proud that they can achieve something in the game. Ripple seems to have become the second life they are currently living. Then when the kids at his school were talking about Ripple, they were interrupted by Hyun-So. At first the girls started laughing at him and even offered to buy him something to eat because they know Hyun-So lives in poverty and doesn't even have a Ripple, which is a must-have item for all school students. Hyun-So responds nonchalantly, so they decide to mock him, saying they shouldn't touch him. Because he's angry, Hyun-So sits at his desk and only thinks about what's wrong with the people in his class. He really, really hates Ripple. At school, he's the only one in school who doesn't play Ripple. He doesn't have friends at school because of that. However, there are still boys who come up to Hyun-So and ask him to take a little walk. A blue-haired boy comes out on the street saying that Hyun-So is really unique because he doesn't play any games and doesn't even like Ripples. He doesn't understand why Hyun-So doesn't do that, because he thinks using Ripple is very comfortable. Hyun-So says that in that game, there's nothing special about it. He's not even interested in her. The boy asks him, saying that Hyun-So doesn't even need to hate Ripple for no reason. Because he has become shunned by the people at his school, intimacy with other students is a component of his school life for him. He then said, so if Hyun-So has some problems with money, the boys can lend Hyun-So. "It's okay, I'm used to it," he replied. But the boys said that it was annoying. But they were classmates. He really wanted to get along with Hyun-So and wanted to play Ripple together. But he immediately got a piece of paper in his face. Hyun-So quickly replied that even at the ceremony, he said that he had rejected the offer. Hyun-So had gone home and told himself that even though he was grateful to Kim Dong-hyun for accepting and caring for him, he still hated Ripple because it was weird. Then Hyun-So sits on the computer and watches YouTube, where once again he sees lots of videos about Ripple everywhere, even in the news. Hyun-So is still sure that he hates it. Does he really hate just because he has no money? Apparently not. This is because Hyun-So saw his old joystick. It has a Ripple engine. The game he hated because it only reminded him of great regret. A trauma that he does not want to tell anyone. Then, seeing a man on stage, he announced that the biggest event of Ripple was about to start, because the #1 player in the world had entered the arena. He is a genius who placed second in the world in high school competition. The man asked the audience, can he finally ascend the throne to become the #1? He finally introduces a mysterious player known as 1F, which means one frame. Hyun-So's parents are not like others because they are very proud of him in both academic and gaming abilities, so they support him who loves to play games. They are what motivate Hyun-So to work hard and just be happy, even when it's hard. But soon, Hyun-So gets an unexpected disaster. In a few years later, parents passed away. But this didn't stop us Hyun-So game, he also continued to play games, even when it's too hard. He didn't play because he innocently liked games, but because every time he played them, he even felt that his parents were with him, even though he didn't know if he just wanted to forget the pain that haunted him every day, or what it was. Time passed, and he began to feel something. Hyun-So understood that the game was his life at that time. He is then transported again to some kind of tournament where a lot of people have gathered. There is a moment of tension on screen, where two players evaluate each other. Many people thought that on screen would be the end of the game, but Hyun-So convinces himself that he doesn't need to panic because he just has to concentrate, so that Hyun-So can counter his opponent's attack just by hitting faster than him. Did everyone see Hyun-So's amazing skills? Because he was able to dodge at the last moment and make counter moves, Hyun-So was able to beat a man who was in first place all time with a record of 32 wins with 2 losses. But it was Hyun-So who could fly and beat this player. At that time, Hyun-So was recognized by the whole country just because of the game. Many people congratulated him, so he thought that now his life would be full of happiness. But he understands that he can't be fine. Hyun-So stands with someone else, his boss. The boss demands that he explain why he let the people in the team go. But the boss replied that there was nothing he could do because the company that owns the contest just said that they changed direction. And on top of that, the game of wrestling belongs to the masters. They canceled the sequel. So instead, they started gathering resources and Ripple and are making a game called Stromfist. Hyun-So's eyes were filled with despair. He didn't understand what happened, but his other people told him it wasn't a big deal. Games with buttons are losing popularity, and they also have offers to become a professional gamer at Ripple. Just sign Hyun-So's contract. Can't accept the fact that his team and his game will disappear from the face of the earth. But at that critical moment, the guys appear to Hyun-So and ask, what will he do? Because with his skills he can go wherever he wants. Hyun-So can't imagine a single good idea about that. Hyun-So begins to speak, telling himself that it's even a relief to be frankly speaking in his soul. He thinks that they are stupid trash. Hyun-So is still in the boss's office and he lost. Everyone jumped at him asking what had happened. But he just suddenly lost consciousness. He was in so much shock, he felt that he was going to explode into pieces. Hyun-So had Ripple friends at some point, but all disappeared. It turned out that what he had just seen was a dream. At school, class had long ended a few minutes ago, but he was still sleeping. So she asked, is he sick? But Hyun-So thinks he just has a headache, just because he had a stupid dream, and doesn't mean his friends say he doesn't look well. So he wanted to drive her home. But Hyun-So refused, but the friend did not accept it. He said he has some business so he will go with us Hyun-So, while Hyun-So chases after him. Friends ask about what business he does. Did he ever hit some big students? Though Hyun-So apologizes and continues to chase. What kind of bastards hurt their friends? Next we see Hyun-So and Dawn going to his room. He goes into Hyun-So's room, which is very dirty, and he has to clean it. But Hyun-So doesn't care, so he asks them to leave him alone. Hyun-So had regained his senses a bit, so he asked Dawn, what should he do? Follow him home. Dawn smiles immediately and says he almost forgot because he brought Hyun-So a present. Hyun-So is surprised at this news because he never expected it. Hearing such a thing, she went to her bag and said that she would think twice before she would refuse again. Dawn lifted Ripple up. Hyun-So immediately got angry because he asked not to bring useless items. But Dawn, Hyun-So's old nickname is one, for Hyun-So, was surprised to hear this. But Dawn Hai went on to say that it was a 14-year-old high school student who won first place in the fighting game battle, mastering the greatest genius who can take first place in almost every fighting game. But after that, he retired tired and everyone forgot about him. And since all traditional games were discontinued, released, and the game that Dawn Hai brought him was released by Ripple, Dawn thinks that this game is what made Hyun-So who he is today. Hyun-So remembers that this is his game. His manager had told him about this, but Hyun-So didn't think because of that. But Dawn says that he can't say what is the real reason. But he can only guess, and he doesn't know Hyun-So is going through it well. But he thought so. Nothing would change if he just avoided it. So he asked Hyun-So to try to show him Jang Hyun-So one more time, namely the F1. Next we see that we are told there was an attempt to connect to Ripple, and then the connection was successful. Hyun-So, who has not been given a name, has been connected and greeted by Ripple. He also noticed that the TV existed when they said they had made the experience as real life as he could see and feel. But Hyun-So immediately tried to stop his thinking in this way. After all, he didn't understand why he was so happy in his new world. Then he noticed a strange window. He didn't know what it was. So he went straight to it. He sees that there are parameters set for Hyun-So, must know when to connect to this game. Hyun-So started first of all to see through the rules of the game, but received the message only after he read the instruction manual. Will the training start? Hyun-So is surprised that the nickname can be changed. After the training, he clicks on the icon which will start the training because Hyun-So doesn't want to use his last nickname. He probably will find a better one. With the click of a button, his training has started. In front of Hyun-So, the room immediately starts, taking on a very different appearance that wasn't there before. So he's greeted with a forced game, which the game explains to him that the training will start properly, but his avatar will be generated randomly, but he will be able to change in game. After our training, the hero was given the most balloon-like outfit in front of him. Hyun-So notices a strange figure that turns out to be an ordinary doll. The game keeps talking about its rules. Explains that Hyun-So can use attack just by attacking this doll. Following the instructions in the training, every user has the same physique. Ability that Hyun-So had a little thought, and then he tried to attack, and then he started attacking many mannequins until they were destroyed. The next stage of his training will be fights with real opponents. But Hyun-So still can't understand if it's possible to have fun just playing it. When Hyun-So is in his head, the game has already found a new opponent, whose ones have started appearing in front of Hyun-So. At that moment, a strange man appeared in front of Hyun-So and informed him that he had been waiting a long time, so he welcomes him to training room. Hyun-So wants to ask something, but they call him a nobody and ask if he is a second account from any pro. Hyun-So was a little hesitant because he just entered the game. He said that this account is his only account. At that time, Hyun-So asked, what flew behind his opponent? He said that it was a regular broadcast like on YouTube. At the same time, the man said that even though Hyun-So said he was a noob, her attire was so unusual that men asked if it was true that she was a core. Hyun-So wonders if that could happen, that she was wearing very unusual clothes. So he replied that, yes, he was because he actually played Ripple the first time. The chatter that flew behind the man just exploded, so the man immediately started attacking Hyun-So. Didn't understand what he was doing, but the man kept hitting Hyun-So, saying loudly, what and where is he going to hit? When did he land the combination punches? He wanted to finish them all using just throws on Hyun-So. Hyun-So doesn't know this. The man is really good at fighting and decides Hyun-So has never seen anything like it in his training. Hyun-So looks at the wall where he flew and he thinks it will hurt him a lot. But then it occurred to him that in fact it was all the technique of the game. He remembered that the physical stance he had heard about wasn't just built into his body. So that he can block the attacker, Hyun-So grabs his opponent's arm, surprising him. The chat room exploded. Everyone is talking about whether Hyun-So is a newcomer or not. The guy in turn thinks that Hyun-So really has a good reaction. So could it be that Hyun-So is putting a block on everything? And at that moment, when Hyun-So is looking at his hands and thinking, could it be that the techniques and logic of the moves here are very similar to his past games? Where he's a professional, the man turns to Hyun-So and says that seeing Hyun-So, he realized that he is used to this type of game. At that point, the guy just lit up because he had imagined what he called his video. Something like me teaching a lesson to a professional pretending to be a beginner. Then the guy decided that from now on, he would play much more aggressively and collect his. Her mind also tells her that Hyun-So is also very attractive. He asked if Hyun-So can play with full strength or not. Hyun-So, who is captivated by what he has. He was told that he was a very interesting person. Hyun-So thought he was delirious, but he woke up immediately. He didn't understand when he fell asleep. He looked at Ripple and wondered if he was having fun, and if he should charge him. He kept remembering how he felt at that moment when he had played the game. He must have remembered that he had fought recklessly, but couldn't remember if he could beat the guy or not. But we saw a screenshot, or rather a replay of that battle chat. The whole chat amazed me that Hyun-So was able to beat him, while others called him different. They wrote that Hyun-So just smeared him next. We saw that the guy's name was Frieder He Pyrin G3 players targeting newcomers' additional accounts. So in short, he just didn't do a good job. But he still managed to lose to dubious newcomers during the broadcast. We could see that a lot of viewers saw the chat in his own fight, because it was very broadcast really shook up the whole Ripple community. This means that a video in such a short time has caused a huge response, has caused a lot of Ripple users to become interested in Hyun-So. Because of this incident, Hyun-So, who showed very good talent in one moment, could definitely write a new story on Ripple World. Hyun-So's school is in class, and Don tells him he's really cool, and Hyun-So doesn't understand anything. He would even say that it really scared him. So Don saying that his opponent is human is very famous among high-ranking players. At this point, a mysterious player enters. Black demonic garb appears and wins a quick victory over the high-level Pyrenees, third-rank player. The moment he saw with his arrogant smile, he became a fantastic public object. Hyun-So can't believe it. Was everything that Don told him true? Are they actually discussed all over the internet? Don said one fake word during this whole conversation, because actually people are rushing to find out who it is who is capable of creating such a thing. Hyun-So thinks about it and thinks that it's really good, because his face is hidden under the hood. Hyun-So even said it caused a lot of messages in him. Messenger asked him if he wanted to go pro on some Fama, or something like that. They offered to join somewhere. Don said that, although happy for him, but still asked to be careful because it's better to avoid the place to call Fafa TV. He can't understand why he shouldn't be afraid of this place. So the Don explains that there are hooligans who gather and fight among the school's students, named fighters. This brawl led to them sharing Pyrenee Gakat with each other via streaming platforms. So they organize matches between participants with fighters or sponsors' money. If someone manages to reach certain Pyrenee G Cat, he can get huge cash prizes from platforms on illegal game servers. Hyun-So is very happy because he hears the word money. But Don asks him not to be fooled by only money. So he says that it's very dangerous there and Hyun-So shouldn't even think about joining it. By then they were gone, but some of the girls had noticed them all. While comparing the newcomer's image from the game with Hyun-So, he noticed that Hyun-So's image in reality was very different from the one in the game. Then he finally realized that the newcomer's name is Jang Hyun-So. After that, he left the class. Goodbye, Don. He says that he has a part-time job after school, so he will go home by himself. On his way, he thinks that he is in a very bad situation because lately he can barely make ends meet and he can't cover all his expenses. By earning extra money, he couldn't borrow from classmates, but he couldn't borrow from relatives. But two weird boys come up behind Hyun-So and tell him that they have found the one they are looking for. They say they took Hyun-So somewhere. They take him to class and start taunting him, asking if he remembers it. Hyun-So doesn't understand why they called him. Why do they need him? Others stand there, says they are in the old school building, where the teachers simply did not go. Hyun-So doesn't understand why he has to go through all this. If it was because he had a bit of an old story with one of their people. It was then he realized they were absolute trash. While Hyun-So thinks about it, the hooligans started asking nerds for money they told them about. They ask for 5 bills of money tomorrow. But if they are too late, the hooligans will beat him. When Hyun-So stood still, he was beaten. The hooligans started to ask each other why he was so angry. In the end, we find out that he lost a lot of money on Fafa TV. Hyun-So heard the name for the second time in one day. For he had heard about it from the Don. But whether it was all illegal or not, he didn't know exactly. He just realized that Fafa TV is a meeting place for the ragamuffins, which the bullies asked about. It's fine to beat up the students since they might complain. But their leader says that he won't do anything, because Hyun-So doesn't have anyone. Hyun-So can't win, he understands. How did he know? But bullies say that there are many rumors about him, even hating Ripple. Hyun-So had his old face again, giving him another nickname. The bully immediately looked at him and asked if he wanted to die, and if not, he asked him to make a simple face. The bullies start beating Hyun-So so hard that he's even told that it's too much. At that moment, when a girl appeared at the door, at first she told them to shut up, because if they didn't have anything to do, then at least they wouldn't be throwing business trash in the old school. Another bully came up to her and threatened her to leave, but he only asked him to take his. If he just wants to live, the bully says that he is not afraid, but another bully is holding. Hyun-So seems to remember her. He thinks for a moment, and realizes that she is a high-ranking Fafa TV player. So he immediately ran to his friend to wait, but it was too late. The girl threw her fists out and called them weak and bluffing cowards. The hooligans were so angry that he called their friend weak, so that they immediately began to attack the girl and run towards her. Their chief asked one of the hooligans to stop and not to run at her, but Hyun-So thinks that he is the one who created this situation, because he thinks it was deliberately provoked. He fought, he immediately dodged it. Hyun-So watches and understands that he will provoke another attack. Hyun-So knows that there is more for his opponent to do. He waved his fist to hit him harder. He will be able to do it. He saw that the boy had already swung to make his final attack, but he realized that this was a provocation, so the girl punched him and did strikes back. Hyun-So saw that the situation had changed like in the game we saw, that many people were already lying around the room, but their ringleader said that all the rumors about Fafa TV player were true. But the girl wasn't happy, so she told the bully to take the hooligan and run as far as he could, get as far as he could. The hooligans leave soon, but the girl stays with Hyun-So. He asked if she was okay. He touched his cheek to check if he was hurt. But Hyun-So feels embarrassed. She also gave me the ointment and said that it would be better if she used it regularly. Then this girl was on the phone with someone, and she got asked if this hooligan was compatible or not. Most likely it will be about accepting them into the Fafa TV gang. However, the girl was against it, because she saw their pitiful appearance and understood that they were definitely no match for the people they were. Then he was told that he had to hurry because they were about to take final exams, and things weren't going well. If the person on the other end of the line has time, he asks them to follow up on this action. Hyun-So immediately goes to his part-time job. He rejoices that he is not late. He was happy. He would do it without having to leave school. He thought of the incident earlier where the hooligans would attack him, and then a girl would save him. But Hyun-So can't understand why he saved her, and he seems to say it's him from Fafa TV. Hyun-So thinks of everything in the toilet, but he's told to hurry up. So Hyun-So starts serving tables again. He was asked to serve guests. Hyun-So gets scolded by his boss because he can't make ramen or he can't be somewhere in time. He came to table 20 where he had been asked to leave earlier. He called the man's attention, but the man didn't answer and looked a bit intimidating, and then he turned towards Hyun-So as if challenging him to a fight. Hyun-So decides to ask if he likes ramen or something like that. But the man turns to Hyun-So and points his finger up saying that the ramen is good. On the contrary, so she wanted to compliment him. Hyun-So was surprised he didn't expect to be praised, so he thought the guy was really weird. But the man called by Hyun-So strangely tore his hair. After Hyun-So has gone because he could just not understand. How? His friend asked him to follow Hyun-So because when he came there to see him, he certainly couldn't imagine that he could be brought to fate. But then he had looked at the description that had been given to him, and saw that it had written something about a game tournament going on. He looked into the browser and searched for information about this tournament. He discovers that it is dedicated to the Korean battle, but Hyun-So is known as 1F. He not only once but won 8 times in the fighting game Korea League Battlemaster. He is also the #1 Parin-G in the world and only has 2 losses. It doesn't matter at all considering his win. But after the sudden closing of the sports club, he disappeared somewhere. He even thought that Hyun-So was a very impressive file, but Hyun-So was just a hoax, which was very hard to believe, seeing as the character is very far from fighting and sports, not involved at all. This man saw it besides. He still decided to make up his mind, and he would think about the repercussions later. Hyun-So stood up and ventilated because it was very hot outside the room and in the room itself. Next, we see 2 men walk in, talking about the fact that there are still people in the world who play computer games. Games, but not Ripple. But they have not fully understood why play games on a PC when there is Ripple. At one point, they came to the decision that sometimes you can play Hyun-So. We watched the 2 guys and understood they were the same hooligans who had attacked him at school. But Hyun-So can't react that quickly, so they grab him saying that they just met and that they have something to talk about Hyun-So, not understanding what they were doing there. The person who saw this scene just now, no longer willing to risk offering him a job on his team, he wonders what he should do, that time when the man crumples the paper, draws Hyun-So, and thinks that he will tell everyone that Hyun-So failed the test. So it seems nothing bad should happen. But then, when he saw the picture, beyond reason the hooligan had already led Hyun-So and the other workers to threaten to call the police. But they didn't care because they didn't even think that he could do anything for them. The man was also shocked that hooligans grabbed him in the middle of the day and let him out the door. But then he remembered that it was the hooligan he was talking about. Irene called out to them. Unworthy, so she thought. Now is a good situation, he said. Precisely these hooligans were suitable opponents for the test. So it might be fun now. When he took Hyun-So outside, the fat pig started beating him, and he told him that it was because of Hyun-So that they had been beaten by Irene, that he wanted to kill him. But his friend standing behind him told him to wait. He came for Hyun-So and wanted to offer him a deal. He says that they are victims like him, so they could put in a good word for him with their great friend. But the bottom line is that if they cover for Hyun-So, he has to give them 40% of his salary as a bribe. He tells him that his friend is very smart, and he is in turn as befits a fool who is too stupid. Confirming his words, the man watched everything from a corner and thought that it was good. The decision that Irene didn't take them because they were just trash. Hyun-So backs into a corner, thinking what kind of bribe is involved. What kind of nonsense is this? He only had one encounter with them, and now he has to endure this attitude. But he has to give money to these freaks. Soon they will demand more from Hyun-So. He stands with fists and thinks that he will not obey them. He tried to fight his enemies. The opponent has appeared behind Hyun-So again, and he urges Hyun-So to disobey him too. But Hyun-So doesn't have time to discuss anything with him. He punched in his head because he had ignored those freaks. The whole time Hyun-So was scared, but he dared to answer. They understood nothing because they expected him to agree with them immediately, just like all the other nerds. But Hyun-So is not like that. All this time being watched by a man who can't believe it. Her eyes widened. But the school kids get angrier than they were before, and they roll Hyun-So over and start beating him, saying that if Hyun-So disobeys them or ignores them, they will continue this beating. The man searched at the time and still couldn't understand how he could respond with such conviction, but in the end he pityingly backed away. But soon he thought it would be worse if he really left, or should he go butt in. But he decided to watch the scene for a while. When the hooligans finish their attack on Hyun-So, they call him a worm because he treats him more than disrespectful. So they think that each one of them is doing what they think is right. They came to Hyun-So again and grabbed Hyun-So's head, as if they were expecting him to say he would be totally wrong. But Hyun-So says he won't give anything back, and that triggers a wave of aggression from one of the guys kicking him in the face really hard. They beat Hyun-So once again, and told him that they would give him another 5 minutes. If he doesn't want the answer to delay the time, he has to understand that a small amount can make his life very difficult. The hooligans laugh at him because Hyun-So really doesn't know how to fight back, but he still protested. Hyun-So is very offended by these words, because they say that his life can become very difficult for a few pennies. But Hyun-So understands that his life can't get any worse than that now, so he asks not to make her laugh. He got up from his knees. Everyone who saw him was shocked and shocked the hooligans. By that time, the man had dialed 112, because he knew that if he didn't call the police, the situation could be a lot worse. But he's sad, because he doesn't know what to do, and their distribution exam is about to happen. So he wanted to find another participant somewhere else. But he is interrupted when a very loud laugh is heard from the fat pig. He laughs because he doesn't understand what Hyun-So is doing. But Hyun-So is otherwise so serious he takes a stance as if he is ready to fight. He said that he would never give them money. The white-haired hooligan had already lost. With his temper, he tells Hyun-So not to hope that he is better than Chunan, and the hooligan realizes that Hyun-So can get angry, so the bully has his shirt off. Tells Hyun-So to get ready for a short break from school. The man had started talking to the police station asking about the incident, while Hyun-So and the bully will fight each other. But the man immediately hung up because he immediately became very interested. But Hyun-So doesn't have time to laugh because he's never fought anyone before. But he still remembers the feeling of fighting when he fought other men in Ripple. However, he understood that in life, everything was much slower than in games, so he thought that he could dodge it. Punches immediately flew to his face and then to his stomach, trying to be calmed down by Hyun-So getting down because this is the only way he will do it, gathering his thoughts. But the bully still attacks, saying that Hyun-So is not suffering enough. Hyun-So tries to concentrate because that's all he needs. He almost succeeded because his fist didn't hit his face, but just lightly on his cheek, and he knew that it still wasn't right, and that he had to try harder. He knew that the only thing he had to think about now was the direction of the next attack. All he saw was the trajectory he would have to dodge. The bully starts hitting harder, but Hyun-So starts to dodge. He begins to trace the patterns of his opponent's movements because then he will be able to turn the situation to his advantage. The bully gets mad that Hyun-So starts to dodge, but Hyun-So remembers what he has to do just like that, because that's how Irene had fought back last time. In turn starts using his feet. The guy sees all this and remembers that if you look at it this way, it turns out that it is Hyun-So. In the news, his first nickname in the history of fighting games is the cyber athlete with the brightest talent because it's the cyber athlete with the best reaction. one of time, and currently, Hyun-So still manages to dodge his attacks and counterattacks. The opposite of this manifestation of power is staggering. Not only Hyun-So, but also his opponent. But the bully had caught her hand. She was even angrier than before. He asked Hyun-So if he had done too much, and then he punched him in the face, and then he wanted to end it with his fist. Hyun-So dodges again, so his foot hits the wall, and not Hyun-So. Hyun-So immediately decided that now was the right time to start running because he would definitely miss his chance. Hyun-So only now realizes that he has never struggled before in his life. The bully still tries to hit Hyun-So, but he keeps doing it, dodging and getting angrier. The already vicious bullies and the man who saw them understood that everything Hyun-So was doing made sense. While he was just observing their fight, he was also really tired, so he wanted Hyun-So to do something about it. But still, he knew that even though Hyun-So didn't know anything about basic postures, his skill in fighting wasn't zero. So little by little, the moment came when the unreasonable and stupid opponent completely tired and belittled his own. The fat hooligan opponent even decided to play a prank on his friend, saying that the pressure he had to kill Hyun-So is gradually sinking, and he even taunts him. Hyun-So thinks that this is also even for hooligans, like him, because it hits his pride. Enough! The bully says that he will go to get it. Calling Hyun-So an orphan, Hyun-So has something in his head again. He didn't even realize what was going on with him, and the bully started running at him. The bully ran to him saying that he should stop showing off, and then he punched him. It seemed to the man that this punch was really strong. He couldn't understand why Hyun-So had stopped dodging, and the fat hooligan was even a little scared, actually. He thought that Hyun-So could even die from a friend's punch. But his bully friend doesn't think so, for it's not so easy for a man to die. Fat asked, "What will be done if Hyun-So doesn't wake up again?" But the answer in which it was clear that he would beat him again. It was clear enough the man was standing there gnawing at his finger because he thought that he should have called the police. At that time, Fatty noticed that Hyun-So had not stood up for a long time, but the others still convinced him that Hyun-So was only pretending. Hyun-So jerks his finger and gets up. Then the bully is happy that he can hit him again, and he is right, that he was just pretending. And it will happen. Maybe it's a lot easier now because Hyun-So must be not well. The bully has left Hyun-So. Saw his friend, expecting him to say that he was good. We can see that Hyun-So is bleeding from his lips. He was mumbling something completely incomprehensible. So the bully came and asked him, was he really mumbling? Hyun-So says that now he beats hooligans, understand nothing because he stood there. But then he hit him right in the jaw, and then he kicked him. Hyun-So turns to him with a face full of cruelty and intent to kill and says that he will kill him. He lay down and thought it was so hard to live. Why did he inherit such a difficult life? Hyun-So is relieved that his headaches have stopped. The two evil and ruthless people approached from behind, gestured at him and whispered to Hyun-So to have a little rest in real time. We can see that Hyun-So's punches go really hard on the bully's face. He didn't understand how a kid like that could hit him. In case he changed, he did not see that person in front of him. He saw a completely different person. The bully ran, but after every punch to the bully, Hyun-So followed. Hyun-So, who managed not to get hit at all. Hyun-So is even able to arrange the palms so that no one is seen by the bluff behind him. So another punch goes right through the bully's face. Hyun-So stops that, leaving the hooligans. Confused, Hyun-So looks at him with his crazy eyes and offers to play. The bully thought he had lost his possession, but he still thought he could win. He said that even though Hyun-So dodged and dodged very well, but if he catches it like the previous one, he would win by the only difference between him. But Hyun-So's strength after punching Hyun-So in the enemy's face, he was silent. Sure, that street hooligans will do it. Can't win, make a circle of motion in the air. Hyun-So hit his enemy, which made him very surprised, not understanding why his eyes were blurry and his legs couldn't hold it. The man couldn't believe his eyes that there was a schoolboy who couldn't even throw a single punch, just now could do such a tricky trick. The advantage in a fight is usually determined by the weight class, but a rookie like Hyun-So has talent in how he fights. That is one of the reasons why bullies don't suffer much damage during the first strike. But the man knew it was the same as a rookie who had hit the lower part of his chin, instead deliberately fattening the bully. Someone immediately ran up to Hyun-So, asking if he was okay. But at that moment the police arrived, employees of the computer cafe where Hyun-So works. He says that hooligans have brought Hyun-So to this alley. Noticing all this, the fat hooligan asked his friend to get up, because the police were on their way and the man realized that most likely this fight was bullying. And most likely the reason Irene asked to take a closer look at us. Hyun-So, he even saw an extraordinary case for the first time. So even he couldn't really believe it. But yet he thinks Hyun-So became like a different person during this fight. After that, we see that Hyun-So is still passed out. Seems completely normal to a man. Because it would be abnormal if he remained like that. He understood at first impression, he was still zero. But even considering the fact that they needed to look for those participants, it never occurred to him to even consider them. Pyrene caught newcomer about who he is. No even information after for all course. Thanks to his sober judgment, showed himself in an emergency situation. Thanks to accurate and logical attacks and quick and precise reactions, which are only available to the virtual world of athlete under the nickname 1F. It was clear to the man that Hyun-So was an uncut diamond of potential stature and value. However, the man had a point which bothered him, but he didn't stop him because if one wants to get good gems, one has to take risks. For the man to stand over Hyun-So and tell him that he has passed his test and toss him a piece of paper whose contents he will explain to him when he comes to his place. His senses let him know that he has passed the test, so the next thing we see is the sun shining down on the man we saw earlier, dictating Hyun-So what to do it first. He said it was time for push-ups. Hyun-So does push-ups, and the guy checks the next box. He does push-ups. Hyun-So managed to do it through incredible effort too, but the man didn't stop. He says that now he has to run 50 meters. Once done, all points to Hyun-So being told he should stop for now. Hyun-So doesn't look like him. He is exhausted. He asks if the training is over. But people don't understand what Hyun-So is saying. That he isn't. Not done yet. How could he think that? They told him that his training would end only when Hyun-So ran or walked so. He tells her to run exhausted. Hyun-So asks himself, how could he be in this ridiculous situation? Could it be that he was just rushing to a decision as we can see from yesterday's events? After yesterday's fight with his opponent, he said that he was not seriously injured, but because of that, he gets fired from his part-time job. And then Hyun-So also has a lot of problems to solve slowly. But after that, one of the visitors who had been on the club computer came up to Hyun-So. He asked if it was Hyun-So who worked at the club, and if it was him, he wanted to talk to him. He said all this with a very satisfied smile on his face. Listening to this strange proposal, he replied that he had heard strange rumors about Fafa TV before. Yet the strange man says he most likely knows nothing. Thus Hyun-So heard something he didn't even dare hope for. She heard that Hyun-So was offered to join Fafa TV, but the man explained everything to her as if he had been expected. Hyun-So to join there, or to think about it. She explained to him not about Fafa TV, but about a game called Coliseum that he told. About a group of hooligans fighting for control of each neighborhood, and about times and situations gone as neighborhood chaos. A great Perini system was formed, and lawlessness overtook them. Thus, it's the only way to determine everyone's skills, created from one-on-one battles at Ripple. Separate ranks called the Coliseum. As usual, this has degenerated into a common Pyrene glyph game and a place for dogfighting. There's one gameway called Fafa TV, and the guy just looking for participants who can fight there. So when he saw us fighting Hyun-So, he was intrigued, so the odd man once again invited Hyun-So to join his ranks. Hyun-So hesitated a little because even though he could fight, it was the first time in his life. But he wasn't sure about that. The man interrupts him and asks, is he interested? So he asked, would he be able to do it at least once in his life? What does he want to do? And then he immediately called his old nickname. 1F Hyun-So was surprised because how did he know his old nickname? Doesn't that mean this strange man knows who he is? The man went on to say that he had heard that Hyun-So didn't like Ripple. But that's what he proposed. Very different. He understands that Hyun-So is still very interested in finding ways to beat the enemy. Hyun-So kept muttering that it was his first time fighting, and he didn't have time. But the strange words the man they give, the monthly bonus, and the many benefits of winning, make Hyun-So think, he says. This is better than the normal salary of a part-time job. So he mustn't give up halfway. But Hyun-So doesn't even do it. Kept listening because as soon as he heard about the money, which he agreed to at once, and was eager to get started. Hyun-So had done his practice in over 12 minutes. The man says that with this kind of stamina, Hyun-So will definitely die soon. They managed to introduce us to the guy. His name is Lee. He is 20 years old, and he is also the clan master in the Coliseum. Hyun-So lies on the floor and says that he did his best. so don't blame him for the result. Lee agreed because that's exactly what he does well. Hyun-So asks Lee about something he asked, if the clan has anything to do with the bullies. But he soon heard it. They were completely different. He wondered if it made sense to keep the clan if there were no links. Lee was excited by this question, saying that the faction that runs the Coliseum, the game charges people from the outside, and in fact many of them actually start with an entry fee. Review betting, monthly subscriptions, and even commissions. Then Hyun-So says I've heard so much, so he can become a cyber athlete and not even pay for it. He realized that it was impossible to become one just by registering. After all, join the Coliseum, you need to pay a fee and pass the game code test, and to reach the base G-level Pyrini, need to pay more than 500,000. But he asked Lee, what is school? Kids can even earn that kind of money. Lee replies that it is clan leaders like him who hire people with good skills and solve money problems, as clans generate income as management and sportsmen receive money. Simply can be called a business, however. Lee makes it clear that he doesn't have such a goal, so he offers him to pass Hyun-So. Don't know where they went, except he said that they have a lot to do today. Because to register Hyun-So, they need to take the code to enter the game and do the test too. They need to introduce Hyun-So to the other members of the clan. Seen at this time, Irene is busy with her coach. Lee hands Hyun-So the phone and says that this phone is for his own use, given especially for him. But when Hyun-So passed through this area, he saw many people on the street who looked very intimidating, as if all of them were hooligans. Seeing Hyun-So, many people even called him. He didn't like the atmosphere, so he told Lee about it. He just told Lee he didn't have to. He complains that he can get the code. He had no idea that they had such a place, but said Lee that it wasn't there before, and that it was only there to put the team together before the Coliseum moved to Ripple. This is the place to do it, and even now groups of friends can gather there, but still much lonelier than before. Then Hyun-So noticed that the people called Hyun-So looked familiar. He was right, because among them was Irene, who was standing alone nearby. Don't say hello. Hyun-So is friendly since they are seeing him for the first time, and in addition, Hyun-So looks very weird and fragile. Hyun-So looks at Irene and wonders, is she really part of their team? Then we see the facts. He is a member of the clan Lending Dogs. Two men ask Irene, is she boyfriend? Went there, and the other one also supported the joke, saying he didn't know about it. But at the time, it was the complete opposite of what they said. He called out to Lee. His brother, which surprised everyone, they immediately started asking if he was the same clan lord of the Seed, and then came to Hyun-So. He asks, is Hyun-So a member of the club too? He immediately replied that he had joined the club not long ago. But two people start laughing because they think they got it, because they have no other choice. They are shocked that they could hire such a fool. People say this is bullshit. But others said that this was not the case because it was all thanks to Handsome, the older D-rated older brother. Irene didn't like the fact that he touched her, though she didn't care that he was making fun of her, after taking a beating to their filthy hands. The hooligans walked away from him, very annoyed that they weren't even allowed to make jokes before. They leave. One of them turns to Hyun-So and says it's pointless to stay in the area since the encoder isn't even there. They should also leave Lee, saying that they can't believe that he's gone since he seems to be there. But they are grateful for the information provided. Lee follows his sister and Hyun-So for a walk around the area. He says the slums are growing very fast, but Irene doesn't find it funny and asks, what's so funny about that? But he was sure that nothing could be done about it because he was a high-level Pyrenees player, so he couldn't fight back. Irene punched herself in the face and confirmed that it was actually from this place never got dressed. However, Lee asked her to be patient, as they would just take Hyun-So's code and leave immediately. Where Irene lowered her hands so her hands weren't covering her face, and saw Hyun-So, and then she told him that she was happy to see him in the ranks of her and her brother's clan. Hyun-So was also a bit awkward, and awkwardly replied that he was happy about that too, but Irene had noticed that. So he asked, was she surprised that he was also a member of the clan? He immediately feigned surprise. Lee also said that they should wait for him because he has some business to take care of, and then he will come back to them. When Lee left, Hyun-So and Irene were left alone, and the atmosphere in the air was extremely tense as the two of them fell silent. But Irene decided to lighten the mood by saying she could have done it before, as a matter of conversation. Hyun-So decides to ask if this code is important or just a formality, but Lee wonders if his brother had told him about it. If instead she asks him to see, she shows him that it's impossible to download base game without code, and it's impossible to find out information. Hyun-So's mind asks about the test, which he was told the testers did. Hyun-So himself starts to get very nervous because he will most likely do it and have to fight again. He laughed nervously, and that's what he noticed. But Hyun-So falls silent and hangs up, saying that he had a sudden thought of leaving just like that, returning to not be in the surroundings anymore. Other people also said that they don't know what kind of code, right? He talks about it, but Lee tells them not to be ridiculous, as he already knew before he approached them. He raises his hand, but the man sits at his feet, looking at Hyun-So in surprise. They saw and told him to die. He says that it's better not to do a pacifier test like Hyun-So. Apparently everyone has seen Hyun-So enter their territory and they don't like it. He looks annoying. He said that if Lee wanted to test the boy, he wouldn't feel sorry for him, because he would beat him as much as he could. Lee laughed a lot because he was sure he was no match for the hooligans. It must be. Hyun-So surprises them, so Hyun-So looks at them with a serious look in his eyes and asks them, did they really think that he could beat Hyun-So? Next thing we know, Lee is sitting there watching the game and thinking it's probably what he said. Angering him, he looked at his sister. It was Irene who looked at him and had a feeling inside her that it might be too much for Lee, because even Irene thought about it. Just couldn't handle the situation. But Lee smiled and was sure that Hyun-So could do it. He needn't worry now. He will be able to see an interesting sight that he didn't expect to see. Then we see some people sitting near the gate and their acquaintances running towards them. He screams that the very tough fight hasn't started yet. Very far away, but they saw nothing wrong with it because fights happened there almost every day, and the others couldn't be like that. However, the man in a hurry started saying it was the man fighting, but the girl did not understand who she was talking about. So he asked him again, then he said that he fought with someone. Then we see that the examiner himself comes on stage already thinking that he will do it easily. Defeat Hyun-So. Another man standing in the arena to watch the spectacle said they had not seen their tester test for a long time. Many of them pointed their middle finger and told to lose or win. Apparently he was actually known in them, which certainly wasn't the last one. But he is very pleased with himself and the crowd that is gathered around him at Hyun-So. So he asked everyone to stop making noise and hurry up and start betting, so that they would lose their money as soon as possible. We can see that he is actually a high schooler. Student in high school, and he was a tester at the age of 18. The guy immediately went to the back of the arena to place his bet, and many just stood there waiting to decide who to bet on Hyun-So. He thought, what should he do? After that, he entered the arena without much preparation. People see Hyun-So's making. He is very uncomfortable, they say. Whether to bet on it or not, they said. Everyone was laughing so hard they couldn't believe that Hyun-So would do it. Wins, but Hyun-So is distracted by a kick to the head which sends him flying. He immediately attacks her and she too manages to get distracted during their first fight. The punch was followed by a second, but Hyun-So was able to dodge it. Many people began to wonder if Hyun-So could dodge very well. Not only surprised, but rather it exploded because of the plethora of possibilities. If even a kid like Hyun-So could avoid being punched by the enemy, then he just deflated, and Irene stepped in. In turn, watching everything from his seat, and thinking about the fact that all of Hyun-So's movements are very similar to the Moon's movements he saw. Imposition of the game, but I don't want to say that he was very surprised at the good show. Most likely she's just afraid of Hyun-So. However, he knows it despite the fact that many people don't believe in him and see his weakness. Hyun-So's body was really good at dodging at high speed, just seeing his opponent's movements, but once again Irene's mood changed because she remembered that. Oh, Yan hacked a different tester from the local hooligan spot, so chances are he has something to prepare the audience for. He tells Hyun-So to fight right, because many people like the audience are betting on his victory. Jan sees what they're saying, so he laughs at him because he thinks so mean of them, that they don't bet their money on him, but on the kid. The audience noticed that he had started to take off his clothes, which meant he was going to be fighting seriously. After taking off his clothes, Hyun-So was very surprised because his rival's arms being testers were twice as long, and his whole body was covered with muscles. He takes off his clothes and asks Hyun-So if he can dodge. That time he got her face pinched and asked Hyun-So. Expect to see the fear on her face, what she's headed to do because now she won't use hers. Jan starts running towards Hyun-So. Hyun-So already tries to dodge because he thinks that he will succeed this time. But the increase in arm length made it clear that he would not be able to dodge the blow. He laughs because he got hit first, so he got hit a second time too. This is followed by another punch to Hyun-So's face. Hyun-So starts to defend himself, but oh yeah, content himself with just continuing to beat us Hyun-So. Irene was looking at the whole picture in horror, because as a warrior, she already understood that it was dangerous to retreat. When facing him, Hyun-So's opponent stops in front of a wall for a moment, and not understanding how he got like that, he escorts him there. Turn to look at Hyun-So with such a face. If now he has conquered the whole world, then he starts hitting Hyun-So. Words that he had nowhere else to go. Hyun-So thinks about it and looks at the situation from the outside, and decides that now the right thing to do is to run away, but at arm's length, he can't just run away. Oh Yannick, it's even more fun that he cornered us. Hyun-So he thinks his plan is fair. Irene from her seat silently watched everything and thought that even though Hyun-So had the ability, he just didn't know how to use it in a real fight, because it was just flashy in the eyes. He understood that successively making use of the tight space, the enemy deliberately narrows the range of action to create an advantageous situation. Then Irene wonders, how will Hyun-So really get out of such a ridiculous situation that Hyun-So is in again, that same light in his eyes? Many people froze in anticipation of something, and finally wait for the real spectacle. Hyun-So performs an attack, which turns out to be a counter-attack that does no damage. Exactly as expected from a weakling. Hyun-So can see that in the moment when he wants to attack. Hyun-So dodged his fist in time and went straight for the attack again. This technique is called when reading the opponent, attacking techniques especially counterattacks. The entire hall exploded because no one expected Hyun-So to be able to do something that seemed impossible to so many people. Throughout Ripple Hall, their great and famous testers have punched a lot of faces, saying that they won't even watch this fight, and others are also confirming that they can't watch this anymore. Right now, he was looking at Hyun-So with eyes full of pleasant surprise. He asked Hyun-So, what did he do, and how did he do it? Hyun-So is silent, which makes him more interested. He rushes to Hyun-So with the words that he is real. He starts swinging his long arms at Hyun-So, so that he offers him all the looks, repeating the same thing which he could do when he attacked Hyun-So last time. Hyun-So wasn't missed that much, so he was able to throw blow after punch at him. The whole room screamed, and Irene even opened her mouth. She certainly didn't expect that from Hyun-So. Then we see Hyun-So. Hyun-So looks in his head. What move will she use against him? Just like in the game, he notices that when he attacks with one move, he should deflect to the other side. He realized that it wasn't like the way he was cornered. He attacks with power and sweeping moves, so he knows when he can counter-strike, which he is not comfortable with. The fact that few schoolboys could beat him. So he decided that it was time to kick him, and then kick him with his hands. So Hyun-So won't be able to avoid the large audience. While watching this, all ask each other, did he lose to Hyun-So that way? They even asked who they had bet on, but they all decided that they would bet on him. Many people look at Hyun-So and think of him, despite his appearance, he struggles a lot. Well, at that point, a lot of people started questioning if the testers were doing well because they were picked by alliances and hacks. He is now almost beaten by several schoolboys. Lee also continued to watch the fight without a word. He thought it belonged to Hyun-So, got beaten up in that alley and passed out. It's as if Hyun-So suddenly changed. But then he realized the opinion that he must be so wrong because Hyun-So is like that. That from the beginning on the contrary, it was more likely. That it's all an image. An insecure figure is a mask, and the real personality that hides underneath is a true fighter with such character. Most likely Hyun-So couldn't understand her the whole time. Hyun-So, while he recovered from one more punch, he smiled involuntarily, but he didn't. Note that he was already very tired, but Hyun-So started testing new punches on himself that no one in the audience had ever seen before. He kicked Oh-Yeon in the stomach, but he didn't miss either. So he does the same thing we can see, that Lee goes to his sister. Irene was shocked and said, "You idiot." Irene asked if he was okay. New member of the clan, and if there is something wrong with him. So Irene said that there is something in him. Since then he has shown excellent skills just like he did at Ripple. Lee also complimented Irene for advising them as good and promising newcomers. So at this point, judged they could get the code. However, when Irene looked at the arena, she saw a very scary image. He is standing above. Hyun-So smiles. That's when we see Hyun-So lying. He quickly defeats the enemy and then tells his brother not to dream of such an easy code, so he tells him that next time the code will definitely appear. Lee said he was right. But then he asked again, as if he had already done so. Just auto-answered last time, She told him not to be too shocked for if he lost. Then they would justly have to aim for the other as a whole. The audience is convinced that Hyun-So has lost, and the others say that they have lost their money, here wondering why her brother was so surprised that there would be another time when they can try again, except Lee says it's impossible since he's betting all his monthly allowance on Hyun-So. Irene was very surprised by what she just heard. He couldn't believe it, he said to his brother. She was just Irene who was sick and gambled, started saying names and rants. Hyun-So wakes up. He bends over her and asks, "Is she okay?" Hyun-So doesn't understand anything. Most likely he does not even understand where he is and what he has. Coincidentally, Irene asked us to wait and rest, but Hyun-So wouldn't give up. He kept asking what happened to him. So Irene started saying that if Hyun-So was talking about the exam he just had, fight, then Hyun-So just loses. Hyun-So is very annoyed by this. Irene hit him on the head with her palm and told him to stop flying in the clouds and to wake up, because even though Hyun-So had lost, he had to understand that even without the basics he could do it. So Hyun-So is really nice, and he has nothing else to say. It's because he doesn't really trust Hyun-So either. Hyun-So understood that, but he kept at it. He rubbed the place where he was hit by Irene. Then Hyun-So shook his head. If he's looking for someone, he asks where Lee is. Noticed that Irene's face had changed, so she asked what was wrong with her. Who pressed her hand to her face and said that she was really mad at her brother, but that the examiner's name was Jan, so it seemed her brother had gone to see her, so he might be able to arrange for her to re-examine. Hyun-So doesn't understand what's going on with him. He did not understand why he was trembling. But by that time, Hyun-So's face had changed. He thought that he shouldn't think like that. Actually, he had an idea in his mind to try fighting again. Next we see a girl standing and waiting for someone, but her friends hurry up. She asks, "Is he coming or not?" The pink-haired girl's name is Yejin. Those people met him because they had to hurry. They were late, so they said, "It's someone waiting, so we should go." He knew full well that in this exam there would indeed be many attractive and clever boys, and he would be very curious to see what would become of him. Hyun-So is still sitting and thinking how he can get out of that situation, and many audiences are watching everything. They all almost lost their money because actually Hyun-So would be left without their pocket money for a month, and the others bet 3 months. He almost stopped his heart. They thank him because he has earned his victory. It wasn't just them. He himself wasn't happy with their conversation, so he asked them to hang up or go somewhere else to talk. Even though they were slightly surprised that they had to leave, they agreed and rushed elsewhere to talk. Jan walks by and touches his nose, which is bleeding, as he is totally confident of his victory against this schoolboy, or not Hyun-So. But he was hoping to beat him. To be honest, it wasn't like that. She calls him out and belittles him, and you don't even know she ever fought. Except she wonders why he beat her so badly than she did. He was approached by Lee, who asked if his examiner was okay, whereupon he even joked that he was. He doesn't appreciate the joke, and asks what she wants. It's already over, so why did she come to him? But Lee only asked when he could do the second test, but he said that there was enough talk because there was no need to win the test to get a pass. Lee wonders if that means the one Hyun-So has passed the test. However, he says that he is still thinking about it because he has also received such a good offer from Hyun-So, so he doesn't even have a taste of victory. He looked up at the sky, but Lee cut him off and asked if that was possible. Oh yeah, and he saw that too. He saw Hyun-So, who had just put a high-ranking player in Ripple's coercion. He asked if the Hyun-So who appeared to be a nobody was really. Lee asks if he doesn't believe her, but as expected, he doesn't. But after watching the video, he realized that the face he saw in front of him when his attack was read out. He was the face of Hyun-So, who didn't have any hesitation to clench his fist. He realized that luckily for him, he didn't have time to hit properly, even though he won. He could have lost, and he didn't think it would. He still says he will agree to Hyun-So for now. Lee says, okay, but he still has one more request. He is not happy to hear it, but he agrees. Listen to him. Lee asks for one thing to keep Hyun-So's code and information confidential. Then we see that Hyun-So and Irene were waiting for Lee for a long time. They don't understand how they can talk about anything for so long. But then, something strange was noticed in some old abandoned buildings. It was raining heavily, and in those buildings a strange fat man was holding a doll and stroking its head. But at one point 2 people entered the building and wondered if it was true that they had agreed to meet there. But they replied that someone had told them that it was he who did it. He would have been there, but the fat man from the beginning said they were noisy. because now he was sincerely understanding and admiring each other with his doll. They took offense at not understanding how such an otaku could tell them what to do. Plus, how did he get there? At first this place was not a special gathering place, right? However, the fat man asks her, is she really an otaku? He was the one who was summoned to this place, Hojishima. He is a first grader in high school, and it is known that he doesn't have a special ranking at the moment, and he's still only 17 years old. A young man seen waking up confused when he finds himself on the beach of an island. What was astonishing was he had no memory of who he was or why he was in this place. He stood looking around, then he walked to the middle of the water on the beach and he was surrounded by some debris. Looks like he came from a shipwreck. He looked in the opposite direction and as far as his eyes could see the horizon, he saw no land at all. The ocean surrounded him, and he still didn't know exactly where he was. At that moment, one of the wreckage or part of the ship touched his feet. He looked down and picked up what looked like a house miniature. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a mailbox. He went to the beach and stuck this mailbox right in the sand. After that, he decided to take a walk in the hope of finding something on this island. After that, he continued on his little walk. He walked all day and didn't notice the sun setting below the horizon. As it turned out, he was back at the place where he had taped the mailbox at the start of his trip. This sign meant that the place was a small island that was possibly remote. At that time, he decided to go around again and take a look at the forest he had yet to explore. He started to go deeper towards the island. The vegetation didn't look friendly. The grass was very tall and sharp to the feet, and there was no light to be seen, and it was pitch black. There was nothing to do but explore the forest in such conditions. Also, so he walked through the forest. The grass grew so high that it reached his waist. But at that moment, suddenly lightning flashed across the sky and illuminated the entire area, and a few seconds later it started to rain heavily. The young man huddled under a small cave and kept thinking about where he was and why all this had happened. He suddenly remembered that he had a phone in the inside pocket of his jacket, which of course had been soaking wet the whole time he was in the water. So now it's not turning on at all. The young man threw his phone on the ground twice, and then he decided to try to dry it, so that maybe he has a second chance to turn on the phone. He then looked around again. The rain let up a little, and the young man noticed that not far from him is a large 2-story house, and from there the windows were shining. There is life there. He can be saved. At this time, we were informed that the number of missing tourists on the West Coast has increased recently, and the search for missing Alan H. student is continuing. In a cafe, a man seen watching the news being announced. While watching the news, he saw a diner who was eating, and he turned to the young man with a question as to what he thought of this. While eating his food, the man replied that he thought exactly the same as the cafe owner. He then put the money on the table and was about to leave. The man asks him to stop, he will give him the change, but the young man asked not to return the rest of the money, and assumed it was a tip from him only. The man thought that his face looked very familiar. After that, she approached him so close and looked under his hat that made him look like a devil or dead long ago. He then asked in a low and cold voice, "Is that you, isn't it?" Meanwhile, the next day, the young man who was stranded yesterday at this time suddenly jumped out of bed. He screamed in horror, awakening from a nightmare and not understanding where he was at all. He looked around and realized that he was in some kind of room-like room. He decided to get up and take a look around him. At the end of the hall, he saw a woman cleaning something with a mop. The woman wiped a large blood-red stain. She turned to him with a question to clarify where exactly he was at the moment, and he replied that they were at his house. The woman reported that they found him lying unconscious near her house. Most likely he had some kind of accident or something. He was found by her young daughter and brought into their home. They placed him in one of the guest rooms so he could sleep and recuperate. The young man thanked them for their kindness, and also that they gave him the helping hand he so badly needed. The woman asks where he is from, but he says that he was in a shipwreck and he doesn't remember anymore. The woman chuckled. She said that no one had booked a room for today, which is why she was wondering where it had come from. The lady says that this place is a hotel. But the young man interrupted her to clarify where they were. But the woman pretended not to understand at all what was being said, and repeated that they were in her house. The young man nervously swallowed his saliva and decided to change the wording of the question to clarify the exact location of this strange island. He then looked at this woman's leg, which actually appeared to be wiping away a pool of blood. The lady replied that first he needs to get dressed as he is not wearing anything. The young man looked at himself, blushing and apologizing. She asks him to go to a room where she will bring him rain-drenched clothes when she gets picked up near home. The young man thanks her. He goes back to his room and doesn't understand what a deserted island this is. Why did she interrupted him and did not tell him exactly where this island was? There was a knock on his door and he told them to come in, and then the door opened and he saw a young girl enter. The woman was very beautiful, wearing a sexy outfit and strange tight pants with a square cut. She had big dark eyes and a necklace around her neck, and she was holding as close to it as she could. He noticed that her gaze seemed a little strange to him, and he looked up and down a few times. He also paid attention to her breasts and legs. The young man started apologizing for this, and the girl replied that she was joking. He just looked at her very strangely. After that, this beautiful girl decided to ask what is his real name. But he replies that he doesn't remember it. Most likely his memory was lost after the shipwreck. The girl looks at him in awe and asks again if he really has amnesia. If he jokes that he really can't remember her name, the girl laughs and is amazed. It's like something out of a movie or something. And she thought it was really cool because she had never met anyone with amnesia. She laughed and suddenly stopped. She utters the word, "Okay, this is perfect." The young man asked again, "So how did he get here, and can't even remember his name, and doesn't know anything?" He says that he knows that they are on an island, but he again inquired with the exact location of this island. The girl asks if he is interested in the question. Where is he now? The man say yes. The girl smiled evilly and was silent for a while. After that, she replied that he was currently in their house, and at that moment her whole family was standing in their corridor, looking at them at that moment with very strange and terrible looks. They went down to the first floor as a family and sat down to have breakfast together. The father of the family sits, and behind him is a large fireplace, and a deer's head hangs above it. The father of the family said that their table was not full of food. The young man was surprised that there was actually enough food on the table, so he thanked the head of family. The father of the family again decided to ask if the injuries the young man received during the shipwreck. He replied that everything was fine and decided to try the steak in front of him. Because it turned out to be very tasty, he then told the hostess, hearing that the madam looked at him very keenly, as if she wanted him to repeat the compliment that the steak was very good and she cooked superbly. The young man felt so uncomfortable that even drops of sweat were running down his body from the awkwardness. The woman kept looking at him and smiling, but he didn't say a word, which only made the situation worse. The young man thought that she might want more compliments, so he started complimenting the meat from all points. In the end, they were interrupted by the head of the family, who confirmed that his wife was very good at cooking, so he was very lucky. The young man again wanted to ask where exactly he was, but the head of family interrupted him and asked his eldest daughter to pour tea for the guest. She holds out a cup of tea, but the tea scares him when he looks into the cup filled with red tea and sees his reflection in it. He then remembers the red stain the owner of the house had. When he left his room, it was as if he remembered something, but he didn't know what he remembered. The eldest daughter's name is Romy. She turns to the young man, who is thinking something, with a question about dogwood cherry tea. She asks him if he likes the taste of this tea. The young man still didn't answer. She whispered that it was bright red and the color of human blood. Her younger sister started laughing out loud and calling her older sister a slut. After she silenced her, at this time the head of the family intervened and told them to be quiet. He asks his younger daughter Yumi to apologize for saying something about a whore, and he also makes his eldest daughter Romy apologize to the younger one. After 2 o'clock, the eldest boy named Minwoo got up from the table and then went somewhere, which confused the main character a lot. They told him that he had his own job and that they raised pigs. That is why they have meat on the table. The landlord reports that Yumi, a little girl, personally slaughtered them to death. At this time, He felt uncomfortable answering clearly and continued to chew on the meat. He doesn't understand how a little girl like Yumi can deal with pigs. After everyone had eaten, the young man went to wash the dishes. The madam couldn't understand why he was doing this, but thought that since he had no money and had to rely on their hospitality, he should at least wash the dishes after their meal. After that, the madam thanked him for his work and asks him to went to rest. Then she asked him to relax today, and she started to carry on washing the dishes. After eating, he glanced at the knife while she was washing the dishes and couldn't understand why. He was so focused. He felt uncomfortable after he washed the dishes. The young man returned to his room where he sat on the bed and could not understand what kind of freaks surrounded him. He believed that the whole family seemed to him sinister and evil. He kept going through all the conversations he had today, and he couldn't understand why none of them had answered his questions about where this island was, and they seemed to be so cheeky. They don't even try to hide it. Thinking back to the news bulletin mentioning the increasing number of missing tourists from his past or his dream, but he tries to get his mind off of it. He crawls across the bed to his pillow and lifts it up, revealing the kitchen knife he picked up while washing the dishes. He felt he had to save it so he can sleep. At this time, the door was knocked several times and asked if it was okay to come in. So he had to drop the pillow and sit as naturally as possible. Before entering, on the threshold of the room, the madam appeared. The young man noticed that it was getting late. The madam looked at him with a sinister look, and chills ran through his body. She drew closer to him and immediately put her hand on his shoulder, which made him look very panicked. The eyes are so large that they do not look human. She asks if he has stolen the kitchen knife. This silence lasted for a few seconds. The young man was sweating and cold from it. She decided to repeat the question that she needed a kitchen knife. To break this awkward silence, the madam suddenly stepped away from him and started apologizing several times, because how could she think that he had stolen the kitchen knife? The young man pretended that he didn't understand everything that was going on and asked again, "Are you looking for the missing kitchen knife?" To which the madam answered in the affirmative and started to leave, thinking that her youngest daughter Yumi might have done it. But she always told her not to. The young man continued to sit on the bed, and beads of sweat started running down his face. The madam apologized several times for disturbing him late at night and wished he had not disturbed her. The madam said goodnight and then wished his memory back, then smiled and left the room. As soon as the door was closed, he turned his attention to the fact that his bedroom door was without a lock, which made him feel even more that this house was full of oddities. He knew it was impossible that he would be able to sleep in this place, so he went to the window and started to see everything that was happening outside his bedroom window. He wanted to remember who he was and how he got here. He remembered till the time he came to this place. He had a phone which he threw in the rain because it didn't work and wouldn't even turn on. On the street, the owner's son named Minwoo was walking, and behind him was a man he had never seen before. The young man headed towards his pillow, took a kitchen knife, and decided to leave his room. He wasn't having dinner, and his performance was so far from perfect that it felt like something was going on here. He walks around the house in the dark and down the stairs. Just before leaving, he hears a conversation between the owner and youngest daughter, which proves she didn't take the kitchen knife. He had heard that tomorrow, while cleaning the man's room, she should look for it in the room where he stays, because maybe he had hidden this knife under his pillow. Minwoo told him that they would meet again in the morning, but his face was so scary that it looked more like some kind of nightmare. As soon as the owner's son left, a young man appeared from behind the tree and then called out to this person, which scared him. But the young man put his finger to his lips, indicating that he should be quiet. As soon as they entered into the old house, a strange man introduced himself, his name, Jintae-he. The young man calmed down a bit and decided to find out if he lived here. But Jintae asks, does he recognize him? Young men are puzzled by this question. He did not understand exactly where they had met before. He admits that after he had an accident, his memory disappeared. He decides to check with the Jintae exactly where they are, but the man rudely replies that he would never ask this question, especially those crazy people living in the house he lives in. To remind him, last night in the rain, he saw it as a young man approached the house and was glad that someone was inside. At that moment, someone in a raincoat stood behind him and hit him on the head with a shovel. He loses consciousness and is brought into the house. The Jintai then tells him to let them be, ensures that you are of use. But the young man did not understand why he had to do this, to which the man replied he would soon understand. Currently at home, trying to walk with the lights along the floor near all the rooms, making the floor creak with every step he took, he went to his door and bent down to look through the hole where the key should have been, and saw that he was lying in his bed, with a sinister smile appearing on her face. Madame wondered how she could fall asleep in such a state. But the young man at that time had not really slept, and he was in agony over every word. He didn't understand how much longer this night would last, as he couldn't sleep. More than 5 hours had passed, but the moon continued to shine in the window. That night, a strange and thin boy was sitting in a swing beside a treehouse which is located on the same island. She gasped, her legs swinging on the swing, and in her hand was a young man's phone. After that, he pressed the power button, and the phone was activated, illuminating the whole location with flash. The next morning at breakfast, the table was covered with food. The head of the family asked him, "How did he sleep last night?" As she looks so tired, Romy suggests that she might be the type who can't sleep in an unfamiliar environment. But he says they needn't worry. The head of the family asked him again if his memory had returned to him, and he replied that it had definitely not returned. Until the end, Romy added that everything sounded very serious, but advised him not to worry, and not to worry because sooner or later his memory would come back. He was sitting at the table and noticed that all the dishes were completely different. So he decided to ask, did he cook all these dishes himself? No one has given him an answer to this question. Everyone just silently stared at him as if hiding their anger and hatred for him. So the head of the family decided to pray before starting the meal. But just as they had not started, the madam interrupted him and asked him to say something they had discussed before. He remembered their dialogue and decided to start. He puts his shoes on the table and states that last night someone went out. Hearing this, the young man had sweat dripping from his forehead. Eldest daughter suggests that maybe it is her older brother Minu, because who else can go out in the middle of the night wearing her father's shoes? Yumi at that moment jumped up from her seat and screamed that her brother was too stupid because he was wearing his father's favorite shoes, so now he will die. He turned to his son, reminding him that lying is a sin. So Minu shook her head that it wasn't her. The father asked again about the shoes, and as he was sure that it was his son who appeared to be lying to him, the young man couldn't stand it and jumped up screaming. She stood at the table and said that she put her shoes on last night. Everyone didn't expect that it was him. Therefore, from such actions, they even turned sharply towards him and continued to look surprised at him. He claimed he was bored last night and couldn't find his phone, so he decided to go out for a bit. He thought it was just an old pair of shoes. But the head of the family was lured by the expression that he was bored. He decided to cheer him up so that he would not find this place boring. After breakfast was over, they, along with the head of the family, were on a cliff from where they fired their guns at the flying birds. Usually when they hear shots, they sense danger and immediately scatter in different directions. However, you can always find some that don't have the time to react or are simply inattentive. After that, the father of the family shot at them again, and the bird's body fell into the water. He handed the gun to the young man and asked, why didn't he try hunting? He took out a gun and confessed that he had never shot a gun before, so the head of the family asked if he was afraid. The young man replied that he was not afraid of this. He just didn't understand why, because this was not a food hunt. They would just kill them for fun, like. Referring to the man standing in front of him, the head of the family asked, did he not tell them that he was bored? But the young man didn't know what to answer at that point, so a brief silence ensued. He looked at the head of family with his back to him, showing with his hand what kind of bird he could shoot flying above them. He asked if he could handle it, and at that moment he realized that whose gun was aimed at him. The young man was agitated and started to get heavy. He didn't understand why no one had said anything to him in this place. While pointing a gun at the head of the family, then he decided to clarify what exactly he wanted to hear. Then young men shouted questions. Where were they, as well as the man who looked like a slave, and why he was here. He still doesn't understand what they are doing on this godforsaken island. The shocking thing was that the head of this family was even closer to the barrel of the gun still pointed at him. He clutched his trunk. and replied that this island had no name, and that person was not a slave, but their valuable employee, and they were just running a small hotel, and he was a guest. He had to start paying the price for all the services provided, and at the moment he couldn't pay a cent, but still dared to threaten the owner with a gun. The head of the family took the gun from his hand and pointed it at the young man. After a while, he pulled the trigger, and nothing happened, and the young man was already crouching on the ground, screaming in terror. The guy just laughed because it was a two-shot gun that had to be reloaded after 2 shots, and since he had no money, he couldn't give him a full lesson. The young man didn't even know what to say to her at that point. He was so scared of what was happening that he just watched and listened to everything the hotel owner who was standing in front of him was doing. Then the owner asked, did he know that the gun was not properly loaded? Otherwise, it was quite a dangerous joke, and his eyes were enlarged dark in color and looked absolutely hideous. In the evening of the same day, he sat on the beach and did not understand what kind of family this was. Why is there a hotel on the island that is abandoned? Why did they do all this with him, and why does he not remember anything? And most importantly, how did he get to this island? He tugged at the mailbox that had been standing. A few seconds later, it suddenly fell. Strangely, the tip was very sharp, which made him very confused, and he decided to get closer to it, because why would it fall if there was no wind at all? He drew attention to the post where the mailbox stood because he remembered perfectly well that it was not sharp, and now he held it in his hands and the piece of wood on the end of the box was sharp like a murder weapon. He threw the mailbox and it fell, and then drew attention to the window in the box and decided to open it. There was a piece of paper inside which he easily removed. It is small in size and everything is in pixels, which makes it impossible to see the image on it, and the number 5 is drawn on the back of the paper. The young man looks at this paper first and understands nothing, especially the number 5 on the back. A girl called Romy approached the young man. He crumpled the paper and put it in his pocket. She asks how was her date with her father. He was a little confused by such a question, but after a short time he replied that he was a truly unique person. Whereupon the eldest daughter standing in front of him agreed with the girl, inviting her to take a walk along the beach. He follows her. At sunset, over the horizon, as the clouds are painted a soft pink. They follow each other, and then the young man turns to Romy. That his father told him this island doesn't have a name, which Romy agrees to because it does. He was interested in the ownership of this island on political grounds, so he asked if this nameless island belonged to them. The girl didn't give a firm answer, saying that maybe she was more interested in this, because it looks like they illegally privatized the whole island for themselves, in which the girl replied if there would be other topics for conversation besides the island. She turned sharply and embraced the young man. She approached him very closely and asked if there was nothing here that had caught her eye. He will show something that will be more interesting. He did not know exactly what to answer this question to him. So he asks her how old is she to talk to him like that. The girl replied that it didn't matter at all since they were both grown-ups. It wasn't enough for him, from which the young man was so surprised he brushed his hand to her earlobe and slowly moved his hand from ear to neck gently, touching her skin, which gave her goosebumps. He stroked her face and neck with his hands and touched her collarbones and slowly ran her nails over them. Then he talked to do something really fun. She walked away from him a few steps and he continued to stand still. After that, Romy asked her to follow him, and he left as if charmed. They arrive at a new location where Romy reveals that it is a fishing kit and usually costs 30,000 won. But this time it's all free. The young man was embarrassed and surprised that the girl was talking about fishing, when he stood by her and touched her, and not about what she was thinking in her head. After a few seconds of silence, the girl burst out laughing. He began to ask, what more could he wish for, and what was he thinking? He called her cute from where she didn't even know what to do. The young man shouted that he did not expect something like this. But then Romy asks him, why is he so angry if he finds nothing in his head? Romy asked him as he put the worm on the hook. He thought his memory might come back if he did everyday things like what they were doing now. He saw how he tied the worm on the hook. He almost vomited. But when he overcame the nausea, he replied that perhaps everything would be so. The young man sitting next to Romy noticed that these worms looked disgusting, but he handled them well. Romy turns to face him. and says he is the type of person who gets scared very easily. He laughed a little and smiled as he said this. The waves crash against the rocks, muffling the cries of the seagulls. After a brief silence, he replied that he didn't remember who he was, and that he was also now on a foreign island full of strange people. So he was now a little uncomfortable. Romy apologizes because he is now sure that he got a bad first impression of them, and he knows that to him now, they seem like eccentrics. His father was a very strict man because of his religious beliefs, and because he hated the city, he brought all his wealth and family here to this island in a rather cruel way. Her mother doesn't know anything about how this world works, and she is completely mired in illusion due to syndrome. Her brother Minu just got depressed, and her sister, she has absolutely no idea what she will be when she grows up. The young man replies that he is quite critical of his own family. She asks him to tell about the girl Yumi catching and killing bugs today, as it makes her happy. So isn't he crazy? Romy replied that children his age cannot always tell what is good and what is bad, so they easily crush bugs or do similar things. She turned to him with a question. Maybe she remembers herself in childhood, and maybe he was like that too. But the young man replies that he doesn't remember anything at all, and Romy replies that it must be bad, that it must be. Romy again confessed that she had never met anyone with amnesia, so she was a little curious and wanted to know if she could help by talking to him about his past. Then she apologized again because she knew that this was a serious matter for him, which she was now very worried about. At this moment their fishing float is spinning. Romy shouts at him to pull the bait faster, but the young man doesn't work at all, so he decides to do everything himself. At the moment when she tried to quickly grab the fishing rod, cover came out from under her feet, and her foot slipped so that she was thrown with her whole body right at the young man, and he hugged her and pressed her tighter to himself. Romy asks if he's okay, and did he get hurt when he fell? He also says that he needs to be more careful. But at that moment she got up and sat down next to him. She was silent, and then looked around. It was clear that she wanted to say something, but she was afraid that she would be heard. So that he came as close to her as he could, put his hands on her shoulders and laid her on his back. He then touched the young man's face, and slowly and quietly with tears in his eyes said, "Please save me." Young man was very frightened. The girl at that moment approached him closer. After that, he admitted that he really wanted to leave this island. After that, she suddenly got up and ran away from him, and the young man stood up and thought about his words because he wanted to leave this island. But he couldn't. At that moment, he realized that there was a book not far from him which he decided to take and look at. What is written in it? But all the pages are blank, and there is not a single word in it. He returns home. On the way to him, he met Minu, who was walking with a scythe and a bag of something. His appearance was, as usual, unfriendly. Young man turns to him saying that in the morning he caused a lot of trouble, so he apologized. Minu didn't answer anything, didn't even look at the young man who called him, and continued to walk, as if nothing had happened. The young man wanted to ask if he was being held here by force, but only asked if he was being held here by force. Somehow going wrong at this point, the young man remembers that he was told by a strange man who lives here and helps with the housework he needs to prove his usefulness to them. Young men stand and think how to prove all this. At that moment, Minu approached him so close that his head was almost resting on the young man's shoulder, and he didn't even notice. After that, our young man suddenly jumped back crying and asked what he wanted from her. Minu tells him to give him something to ask. He was very interested to find out. After that, he saw the book and asked, "Is this book Romy's?" The young man felt a bit relieved. He replied that he only took him to Romy to come back. Minu recollected several times. He no longer looks like a man. After that, he shouted that he had killed Romy. The young man stood in front of him and did not understand what was happening now. So he asked Minu what she meant. Minu answered in an inhuman voice that the young man had killed his sister, Romy. But young man refuses, saying that he has no reason to kill Romy, and also asks Minu why would he kill her. The young man turned his attention to the scythe in the hand of the Minu that was standing in front of him. After that, he said that he would finish him off. After such words, Minu went towards the house shouting that they would kill him, and when he ran into the house and began to pull the handle, found that the door was closed. At that moment, Minu calmly walked towards the young man and was about to end his life. The young man was already at the door, panicking. Turning to Minu, he says that he is really mad because he said that he didn't kill Romy. After that, he calls Minu a crazy bastard. All I know at that moment approached even closer to him. His eyes were very large and devil-like, but not human at all, and the young man at this time kept screaming in fear. Yumi comes out from behind the house and says that she just saw Romy. She was in her room having a fashion show. Minu asked her younger sister if Romy was still alive, and she replied that she was unfortunately alive. At that moment, Minu just turned away from the young man, turned around, and left. Minu asked her to give the book she wanted to give to her elder sister. She handed the book to Yumi. Sitting in the same place and realizing that just now he almost got killed just like that, and then they just left without even apologizing. He stood up and loudly ordered them to stop, where Yumi and Minu stopped. He is almost at the limit of his temper, saying that Minu should apologize for calling him a bastard. Minu continued to stare as if nothing had happened. Yumi turned to him asking, "Did he do something bad that he should apologize for?" But Minu shook his head. Minu screams that he didn't do it, but with this did not calm the young man as he had just nearly killed him. Yumi is shocked and asks her brother about it, to which he replies that he thinks he killed Romy. Yumi laughs and says that if she did kill her older sister, then she should be rewarded with not being killed. Young men didn't understand what was wrong with this girl, because now was not the time to be joking at all. Yumi talks to the young man, saying that his older brother thinks slowly sometimes, so he simply suggested that she should not pay attention to him. Yumi continues to talk to her brother, because even though he said that he would kill her, he really didn't want to kill her, right? He replies that if he had killed Romy, then he would have finished him. Yumi looks at her brother again and smiles at him and says, "But he doesn't kill, so there's no need to kill young men now." To which her brother agreed. Yumi asks the young man if he really wants to kill their sister Romy. The young man is taken aback by such a question, but Yumi repeats it again, and she replies, "What is she talking about? Why did he have to kill Romy?" After that, Yumi jumps happily and says that's all right. All differences have been settled. After that, they turned and went to the pigsty, but the young man shouted at them to stop, for he did not understand how they were settling all the differences in this way. The young man shouted behind Minu to apologize properly, as she scared him so much, his heart almost jumped out of his chest. Yumi approaches the young man and asks if he really has a heart problem. He thinks he has no such problem. He was very cruel to the sick. All of her brothers weren't one of those people that could be called normal, so why didn't she stop whining? The young man replies that it's not about whining, but when someone comes after you with a scythe in his hand. Yumi laughs off the word haunting as she stands beside the corner of the house and sees everything. He just held his scythe in his hand and the young man got scared and ran away. You are just a pathetic coward. So what's their fault here? The young man was already emotionally screaming. How dare he call him a coward, and how dare he talk to him like that? He called him a little rascal. At that time, he pushed this girl. He purposely screamed and then knelt down and sat with his eyes closed. At that moment, the door of the house opened, and the madam of the house stood in the doorway. Do not understand what happened there. After that, she saw her daughter crying and sat on her knees at the entrance of the house. So he asked her what's going on here. The girl started complaining and making up things that didn't even happen. He said that he called his brother names because he was disabled, and he also called him a bastard and wanted to beat him up. The young man didn't understand at all what he was talking about because there was nothing like it. He turned everything upside down and made her guilty. The madam turned to him because she thought he was not like that. Why is she raising her voice? Because it's so scary? But the young man claims that he is lying. The madam kept talking because she thought she was a nice person, but she let her down so much because her children were very nice, and she had no right to intimidate them or call them horrible names. Yumi realizes that her mother is by her side, so she repeats her whole speech again and also adds that she spoke badly of Yuni as well. At this point, the young man couldn't stand it and screamed at Yumi to tell him to shut up and stop bringing up this nonsense. The madam turned to her, hugging her daughter, and said they needed to talk face to face. He invited her into the house, poured him tea, and sat him on the sofa. He starts making excuses that all this is a common misunderstanding and so on, but the madam sharply asked him, had he taken a knife? But in his eyes was shown with a tone of madness. She repeated the question, had he taken the kitchen knife? When she approached him and asked him again a few times, which only made the whole situation even scarier. She pretended not to understand what exactly he was asking her and sat down with a confused face. She comes back to the topic of knife again and says wherever he looked he couldn't find it anywhere. She searched all over his room but still found nothing, and at that moment she smiled evilly as if she knew he had it. She moved closer to him, her eyes looking even more inhuman. Frozen emotion on her face made his body shiver in that moment. She said that she was absolutely sure that he had taken it. The woman decided that she could no longer allow him to spend the night at her house, because she could not trust him enough to stay the night with them, because he most likely had stolen the kitchen knife. The young man shouted that he did not take this kitchen knife. But on arrival, the missing knife was found. He will spend the night in a treehouse. He went out at night scouring the whole island for the treehouse, and after a while he climbed the stairs inside. But the smell inside was so frightening that it seemed as if this treehouse was abandoned. It was true that she took the kitchen knife, but this woman, how could she be sure that she was the one who stole the knife? Now he has no choice but to continue his life here in the treehouse. But this part got even better, because from the window he could see into the house, so he would know in advance if someone suddenly wanted to visit him, and the only way to get up here was by using the ladder hanging in front of the entrance. If he blocked the entrance with a box, then no one could enter the house without his knowledge, and tonight he would have a great chance to sleep. He took out the sleeping bag that was placed inside. The moon was shining on him, and he was trying to concentrate so he could finally fall asleep. And just when he closed his eyes, he heard some sounds coming from near the treehouse. Perhaps he fell asleep so quickly that he himself did not notice it. He went to the window to see who exactly was making these strange noises at night. And it turned out there was a child. He sits on the swing beside the house and plays on the swing. The child continued to sit and look somewhere, after which he suddenly raised his head and saw the young man. After that, she jumped off the swing and ran in an incomprehensible direction, and the young man started shouting for her to stop because she had her cell phone. He quickly went down the stairs from the house and chased her. Everything was pitch black, so there was no way to accurately determine where he was running. He then came across a strange field, where tall grass grew up to his chest. He walked pushing the grass and did not understand exactly where this person was going. The moment he realized that he had lost it, he decided to go back because this place seemed scary to him. From several sides, the sound approached. Several entities started to sound, which only made the atmosphere even more terrifying as no one could see, only hear. Beads of sweat were already running down his face from fear and misunderstanding of what was happening now. As these voices approached him every second and seemed to have surrounded him already. They were a few meters away from him, due to which the young man started having panic attacks, and at that moment, people with pig heads started appearing in front of him. There were a lot of them, completely surrounding him. He didn't understand who was standing in front of him, what kind of terrible monster it was, and why they had come for him. At this time, he suddenly woke up in his treehouse where the sun was already streaming through the windows. He glanced at the box-lined door, and so he realized that everything that had happened to him just a moment ago had been a dream. He came down from the house, went to the swing, and thought that in a dream everything seemed too realistic. But he still doesn't understand exactly where his phone went. Someone turned to the young man from behind, wondering how he was still safe and sound. He turned to the speaker and realized that someone was standing in front of him. He asks why young men ignore his advice. The young man doesn't understand what Jinte really wants from him. But she just wants the young man not to upset them, because this makes life difficult, not only for the young man, but for her as well. He had come to him this morning to repair the flaws in the door he had brought with him and to begin installing it. The young man thanks him. The young man decides to tell what he knows about him. The hotel owner tells him that he is only their employee, in which he is shocked at what the employee said about him. But Jin-tae still agrees with this statement, as if the hotel owner believes that he is an employee. The young man decided to ask if he was being held against his will on this island. He smirks and asks her, after everything she's seen, is she still asking this? As soon as Jin-tae finishes installing the door, he promises to put a lock on it, but he plans to do that later. He is about to leave, but the young man asks, does he want to run away from here? Young man believe that if they keep the house, then they have a connection with the outside world. So visitors have to come to them from time to time. This means to book a room they have to use the phone or the internet, and of course they had to have a boat. Hearing this speech, he only said that he wished him good luck in fulfilling his purpose. It can be seen that he doesn't want to leave this island. But why can't the young man understand why Jin-tae is being so cynical? Why he doesn't want to escape from this island because the people who live here are crazy? Because he himself told him that he offered help to each other and run away from here. He admits to Jin-tae that he doesn't remember anything at all. Mainly because he lost his cell phone, so that he has no chance to escape from here alone, and they have to help each other properly. He didn't hear any answer from Jin-tae. Just empty silence. So she started begging to answer him. At least something, because yesterday she was so talkative. A young man comes up with a brilliant idea when a new guest arrives, then asks for their help. Suddenly Jin-tae chuckled at the word guest, and replied that indeed some guests had just come to them. Whereupon the young man, excited and surprised, started asking the Jin-tae about it. He replied that yes, they really came, but now they are with him somewhere here, and pointed his finger at his belly. Hearing this, the young man became extremely shocked and stunned with fear. The young man is silent and doesn't understand what this means, so he asks the Jin-tae what he means. With this, and Jin-tae left quietly thinking that it was just lunch, and he was very hungry already, so he better go and eat. The young man chased after Jin-tae and roughly grabbed his arm. He shouted and asked Jin-tae to repeat what he just said about the guests. By the time he took his hand, the young man saw a needle of wound at the bend of his elbow, as if Jin-tae had taken some kind of intravenous drug. This is very shocking. He finally lets go of her hand in fright, so Jin-tae pulls it out and starts walking away. She asks him, did he see everything? But the young man did not understand what exactly he was asking him. He turned his head towards the young man. He seemed to be under some kind of substance and his eyes looked crazy. After that, she asked him if he saw everything. Jin-tae's treatment of the young man infuriates him. He doesn't understand why she treats him so harshly, as if realizing that he would not be able to give up. According to him, he took him from the needle. He grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and called him a fucking junkie. Young man asks if he was also joking when he said that Minu hit him with a punch on the back of the head. He also asked Jin-tae to clarify about the words about the visitor in his stomach. Jin-tae admitted that he was just playing around and joking, so he apologized. After they cleared up all the misunderstandings, the young man decides to ask the Jin-tae about their hotel and business, and whether they really keep everything for this purpose. She agrees, but the young man still doesn't understand why a Jin-tae is on this island if he isn't their slave, nor what mark is on his arm from the needle. But Jin-tae was silent and did not give an answer to a single question. After a few seconds of silence, Jin-tae asks if the young man really doesn't recognize him, but he still doesn't understand. How exactly would he know her, especially since she is amnesiac? She thought she couldn't recognize him because she was so fat, because she thought she was very famous. But it wasn't like that. Jin-tae suddenly stood up and started dancing, and then took his most famous pose. After that, he said that he is a celebrity and player named Jin-tae, who was a former national star. Then the young man remembered the news bulletin, which said that a famous player suspected of using drugs was currently missing. The young man then remembers that he was on the news calling Jin-tae a drug addict. Jin-tae stood in front of him and didn't understand what he was saying about what seafood shop. What did the news have to do with it at the time? The young man jumped up and started screaming happily that he remembers. He remembered that he was an idol performer. His name was Jin-tae, and he was a drug addict. That is why he left the stage. The news said that he was missing, but he had been hiding here all along. How he breathed a sigh of relief. as he realized that the memories gradually restarted to the young man. The young man realized that if he kept on remembering a bit, then soon he would be able to bring back all his old memories. Jintei scratched the back of his head and thought now he would be able to forgive his little prank. When his walkie-talkie called out to him, he was told on the radio that he needed to check out the public restrooms. Jintei promised that all this would be done and started getting ready. She asks him if something has happened. The Jintei just sadly replied that they were here. At this time, visitors to the island were walking along the beach. It was a young couple, and they were met by the owner and hostess. The visitors had actually arrived. They were followed relentlessly by young men, which meant that the ship had finally arrived here. It didn't matter to him whether they were running the guest house or not, but he didn't want to stay here for even a second because this place was so creepy. He saw footprints in the sand, so he got the idea to follow them, and then he could find the boat. At that time, young man remembers Romi's words that he likes him. He wanted to escape from here, but at that moment he decided not to think about it at all, because he didn't have to think about it for his safety. When he was running away, he met Romi, who asked the question where he was going, so he was in a rush. The young man replied that he was in no hurry anywhere, but Romi thought that he wanted to run away, and asked this young man a question. Trying to catch his breath, replied that he really wanted to escape because he believed that the visitors arrived here by boat, so he suggested that he should go together. She approached him again, almost crying. He requested that they flee this island together. The young man asked, "Is it true that his parents bullied him?" But he did not understand what exactly he was talking about. She reminds him that the book was left on the beach. Why did he leave her? He looked, and silence didn't know what to say to him, and in just a few moments he said that this is not his real family. After that, without any further questions, they started running towards the boat. She runs and holds his hand to run faster. He asks her to tell everything as soon as they can get out of the island. They finally ran to the boat and saw that Minyu was sitting in the boat. Then Romi decided to distract him, but the young man was not sure that everything would be fine with him. But Romi answered him that if something went wrong, so he was bound to run alone. After that, he asked her to promise him that he will definitely come back for her and take her from this island. Coming to his sister, she asked him why she had come, because if his father found out, he would surely be punished. But Romi tells him that he came here for a short time. She took lipstick out of her purse and painted her lips. After that, she said that her father gave her this lipstick last time, and doesn't she think that she is not cute and not the latest model? Minyu stood silently looking at her. He told her that she wasn't really good at fashion, so he couldn't say that she was pretty. But if he thinks so, he might agree. Romi says this answer that Minyu is very boring, and by then young man has run away and is ready to hit Minyu with a rock. Minyu turned around abruptly and grabbed her hand, with which she wanted to hit him on the head with a rock. Minyu asked why she need this stone. After that, he threw him from the young man's hand, and after that grabbed him by the neck. The young man shouted for Romi to get into the boat as soon as possible and sail away from here, but he asks her to promise him that she will also come back for him. The girl promised him that she would definitely come back for him. After that, he jumped into the boat, started the engine, and sailed away from this island. Minyu ran after him. He screamed that he couldn't just swim because he would have big trouble. She screams at him to come back because when he leaves, he will only make things worse. The young man lying on the pier started laughing out loud. Minyu called him stupid bastard. However, the young man says that he doesn't know why he doesn't want to let them off this island. But what will he do now? Because Romi is so far away. That night, he was sitting at the table at home, and the hotel owner was talking to him. She asks if he really helped Romi escape from island. Young men imply that their own daughter wants to leave. But the father replied that he was the head of the family, and only he could decide what his daughter needed, and he had no right to interfere in family affairs. His mother sat next to him and was worried. He said that Romi took the only boat on the island, so he couldn't think what they could do to the woman. Young man says that by his act, he is hurting them, and what will happen if Romi doesn't come back by then. Everyone at the table started laughing, but the young man sitting at the table with them did not understand. Why exactly is everyone laughing, and what is said funny? He could not stand it and jumped from his seat. He is interested in the question what is funny here, and also if they themselves make fun of Romi. All this time he was telling them that Romy had told him that they are not his real family, and maybe he doesn't know what is behind this blank book. But he thinks that with this book, he must be asking for her help. Father says that he has completely lost his mind. His mother laughed and said that Romy had always been a free-spirited child and he liked to tease everyone. Yumi's younger sister confirmed that she was crazy bitch. Her mother steps in because she shouldn't talk about her sister like that, and Yumi agrees that she knows that. The head of the family got up from his seat and said that he would not go that far. But he thought it would be a little indecent towards her, so he invited her to speak frankly. She asks him who in his entire family thinks he is the most abnormal. But young men do not understand what exactly. He should answer this question right. The person who suddenly appears in front of them claims that he has lost his memory, and who has no idea where he came from or who he really is. When he showed up, they had a knife missing from the kitchen, and had his shoes on without permission, and was wandering around the house late at night. He looks extreme. He is so grateful to all of them for helping a homeless man like him. He apologized to his family if he caused them any harm or inconvenience, and he also admitted that he should be held responsible for what happened to their daughter. However, he says that he has to get off the island no matter what, so he asks them if they can use the internet or the phone they have in the hotel. He confesses that not only is he a victim of a shipwreck, but he needs a doctor's help, and he can't stay here anymore. He agrees with what they say about him, that he is crazy, so he begs them to give them any way so he can get off this island. But he was told that there is no internet or phone here at the moment. He realized that there was no way here to contact the outside world, which made it even worse. Then he decided to ask, what happened to the guests who decided to stay here? But on the faces of all the family members, one could see the misunderstanding when he said something about the guests. Not understanding what exactly he was talking about, he told them that he saw them with his own eyes. But at that moment he understood that now it was useless to prove anything to them. He ran to the second floor and began to open each of the doors' hotel room to find a young couple who had arrived on the island today. Each one was empty, and he couldn't understand where they were. Then he remembers that he was told something about guest room B, so he asks himself, where is guest room A? The hotel owner approached him from behind and something gloomy radiated from him. But the young man shouted something about the guests and that he had seen them on the beach. He grabbed the innkeeper by the collar and demanded to show him where the guests were. Whereupon Yumi states that this person now seems to have moved his head all the way. Yumi informs him that they don't name their guest. The young man continued to restrain the innkeeper. He asked her, "Is it morning already?" Sunlight and wind came through the windows. Minu walks down the corridor and reads a book that the young man brought from the beach, thinking that Romy needs help, and thus indicating Romy's favorite book, where Yumi laughs at her sister's taste. Minu opened the book and poked it in front of the young man, who told her that this book is not empty. After that, he beat his younger sister, thinking that she had gone mad. The young man started laughing and turned to Minu. He thought Minu spoke like a mentally retarded person when she could read. It's a very good book. He took the book from Minu's hand and asked, did she want to tell him this book is not empty? But he must have lost his mind and not Minu, who was reading a blank book. The young man states that he wants to hear the part Yumi just read to Minu again. Yumi looks at the book and asks the young man why he did this. What is the point? The young man asked if he could read the same lines or not, because if not, then Minu just made it all up. Yumi says that she is wrong. She just doesn't want to read anything, but the young man is convinced that this book is empty. He looks at the whole family and screams at them, who are they all? They really wanted him to believe they were running this house with no connection to the outside world, and now they had the urge to make him look crazy, to make it work like they did with the drug addict idol. The innkeeper did not understand who exactly he was saying. Drug addicts? But the young man immediately started shouting for them to stop pretending. Every time they are clueless. He screamed that he would not be their slave, and also forced them to tell what kind of island it was, and gave him a phone so he could contact the outside world. The innkeeper asked, does he know how many uninhabited islands there are in their country, and each one has a name? The young man started screaming that this was complete nonsense she had just told him. But the owner said that it was useless to argue with him, as his condition was much worse than he thought. Referring to the Jintai, the innkeeper approached the standing Jintai with a gun, pointed at the young man, and as he passed, next to him he slipped some kind of envelope with some kind of substance into his pocket. He asked the Jintai in a scary voice to completely isolate the young man from their family. The young man doesn't understand why Jintai is pointing a gun at him. In the evening of the same day, he was in the treehouse. He lied and didn't do it. Why he is trying more and more to find out their family, because from here he falls into a bigger trap. He realized that he couldn't casually wait for Romy to come back for him. With help, he now only has to figure out how to get off this island. The guests had indeed arrived and he had seen them with his own eyes, so he was sure of that. But does that mean there are more buildings on this island because there are no houses? Or maybe they are hiding something under a building in their basement? At that moment, he realized that he needed to find something with which he could open the door. He understood that he had to get out as quickly as possible to meet these people because they were likely in danger. He picked up a large iron pipe. He thought the best idea would be to join them and escape before it was too late. An arrow caught his eye. He picked it up, and on the back of the arrow was some kind of paper stuck to adhesive tape very similar to the one he had found in the mailbox on the beach. He peeled off this paper and turned it over, and the number 9 was written on the reverse side. He did not understand what kind of paper and number he found, because there was no explanation. At that moment, something started making noise outside the window again. He came and looked, and at night the strange boy she had seen was back swinging on the swing. He thought this was a dream again. He began to call this boy swinging under his window so that he would wake up and try to open the door, because maybe he lives here. He tells him that apparently his family kept him here because of a misunderstanding. But he must have promised him he wasn't a bad person, and by the way reminded him of the phone he most likely picked up somewhere. Young man begged to return his phone to him. Young man promised boy to bring him something tasty if he helps him out of this treehouse. Or maybe boy wants game console computer or something else. He offers everything if only the boys will help him out. The boy got up again from the swing and started to run away. But the young man shouted that this time he would definitely not let him go. So he knocked out the window with a pipe and jumped onto one of the huge branches of this tree. He slipped and he fell down. Luckily, he managed to grab the chain, so with his help, he easily got down from the treehouse. At some point, he even managed to think that he would die. The young man stands on the swing and understands that he really needs the phone because he has to help her remember who she is. The young man again ran in the direction where the boy had run away and again ended up on the field. Where was the last time in a dream he met people with pig heads in this field? In front of him is a boy standing in the middle of the grass. He turns to her to keep her from playing and desperately hopes to return her phone. The boy continued to stand in the middle of the field, and the young man was getting closer and closer to him. He asked again the boy to give his phone, but the boy objected that he couldn't give his phone away. The young man, who was already irritated by the misunderstanding of everything that happened, just asked him, "Why can't he give me his phone?" The boy says he never had one. Call. Young man quite understand because when he saw a boy with a phone, it was a dream. But he kept questioning her. He asks what she means because the phone she was playing with must be a young man's phone nowadays. The young man turned around and saw a huge pig standing behind him. Here the young man closes his eyes with all his might, and after a few seconds he opens them again. Then the pigs were no longer in front of him. At that moment he realized that he really had schizophrenia. In morning, he returned to his treehouse, took off the nails Jinte used to nail the door to open it, and went inside. As soon as he went inside, he saw the pipe he used to knock out the window. There was some kind of note sticking out there. He took out this piece of paper, and it also turned out to be very similar to all the previous notes. That he found several large pixels drawn on the front, and the number 3 written on the back. He sat down on the floor and started laughing. His laugh was like the laughter of a madman because this whole situation had gone so far, where there's no explanation for everything that happens. At that point he started feeling that this whole thing was some kind of game, so he started screaming for this guy to get out and stop making an idiot of him. At that time, he remembered how the hotel owner put something in Jintae's pocket, and he thought that everything that was happening to him and his hallucinations could be caused by the drugs he was taking. They had put drugs in his food. Then he sat down on the floor and decided to take out all the papers that he managed to collect on the island. He has 3 notes with the numbers 5, 9, and 3. At that time, he still did not understand what these numbers were, and also why he needed them. But these numbers must mean something, because it can't be about pixels. He began to think that it could be a mosaic or a high magnification image. He tries to see what exactly is drawn in it, but he could not see. He begged himself not to think about it. There was no use thinking too much about it. All can be caused by hallucinations, so he should focus on escaping and nothing more. Among the trash in the treehouse, he finds binoculars. After that, he went to the window and began to examine the crime center, or rather the house that was standing nearby. He put the knife and pipe in front of him and realized that it was too dangerous to carry a knife with him. Armed with a pipe, he left the house. He went closer to the house and began to peer through the binoculars. He could see that the hotel owner was in his room and doing something with a gun. Yumi sat in her room at her desk and wrote. She was reading something as if she was doing homework for school. But there are no schools here, so he is engaged in self-education. Then Minyu came out of the house and carried some kind of package that the young man did not immediately understand where he was going. But when he checked the package, he realized that he was going with him to the guests who had arrived. The young man decided to follow him, and the further he followed him, the more confident he became that he must be heading to the place where the couple had stopped. So this is where the guest room is located. So luxurious that the young man started to cry. Minyu went to this guest room. So the young man decided to wait until he left this place. After some time, Minyu finally left the guest room and started back, which the young man noticed and decided not to hesitate to go there immediately. After the Minyu disappeared, the young man went to the living room and opened the door inside a very dark house, and he started calling someone who might be here. He went further into the house and shouted for someone to help him or answer. But it seems that this young couple is no longer in this house. In the middle of the house, he suddenly saw a table that was oddly lit and had a telephone on it. So the young man went to this phone and immediately picked up the phone and greeted the voice of the receiver, asking the young man to save him, begged him to come to the rescue. But until some of the time the conversation was going on, the young man who was talking to him had absolutely no idea who he was talking to. So he asked who was talking to him, but the voice doesn't stop and repeats it over and over again to be saved, because someone killed it once. The young man asked again, who was talking to him? But the voice repeats that she is in a lot of pain, asks him to help her. She screams that she doesn't want to die like this. It's not fair. The young man decided to ask if the woman who had just arrived on the island with her boyfriend. Are you talking to him now? But the voice only repeated a plea for salvation. The young man could not stand it and shouted into the phone for her to answer where he is now and where his girlfriend is. And at that moment the call was cut off. He kept the phone in his hand and couldn't understand what was the strange conversation between him and some voices from the phone. At that point, he decided to call the rescue service, and as soon as he passed, he said that he had somehow ended up on the island and he had no way to get off it. The voice on the other side of the phone asked again for information about the island, because the young man at all did not specify what type of island he told police. The police didn't know the name of this island, nor did they know exactly where it was. He told the police that several families live on this island, but they are all very strange and difficult to explain. But there is clearly something wrong with them. The policeman answered him on the phone, asking him to clarify all the information again because he didn't understand what was actually being said. Then the young man replied that he was in a shipwreck and ended up on this island, and he also lost his memory. So either way, he needs the help of a police officer. Hearing this, the police were astonished and asked him to give the exact location. However, the young man replied that he had no idea where he was and there was no way for them to trace the call. For example, to calculate the coordinates of this call. Police remember that young man told him something about family, so he decided to clarify, did he ask this family member for help? The young man started shouting into the phone that these people were weird, that he couldn't ask them to help him. The police anxiously asked the caller, What exactly was their weirdness and spookiness? When he called it, the young man ignored this question and asked the police if they could trace this number to find him quickly. But there was a deafening silence in the receiver at which the young man tried to see if the policeman could hear him say hello. But at that moment the policeman answered him with the words he had heard from the hotel owner. He let go of the phone, and it disappeared, as did the table it stood on. He opened his eyes and realized that everything that was happening to him now was his hallucination. The young man stood in the middle of the kitchen and looked around. At this moment she saw the black package that Minu brought to this house, and decided to pick it up, and underneath lay the bloodied clothes of the arriving couple she saw this morning. It must have been the girl's t-shirt and hat showing the pools of blood soaking the cloth. From here he jumped from the basket in which he found these clothes and began to scream very loudly. His screams were heard even outside this house. He leaves the guest house in horror and sadness, and at that moment he remembers a story from Jintae that a guest has to be in his stomach, which triggers a bout of vomiting. The moment he promised himself that he would be able to finish them off, he thought of Jintae advising him that he should be of use. Jintae meets the young man not far from the tree house, as he thinks his bonds are too weak for him to make it out of this house. At this point the young man wonders if the Jintae know that this family killed their own guest. But even so, she wasn't by his side, so there was no point in telling him. What he saw, young man decided to be useful to this family. So he asked Jintae how exactly he could be useful. Jintae says that the lady of the house really loves her job, so she just needs to prove to them that she's very needed and show some use for her. Now he asks her to leave, as she doesn't have time to talk to him. He asks Jintae to give him his toolbox, as now he really wants to show the whole family its usefulness. In the morning he was already in the garden at the hotel and hit a pile of fences. The young man noticed that the hotel owner was walking towards him with a gun, so she greeted him and asked him where he was going. The owner is only interested in who released him because distrust of young men is still great. The young man, on the other hand, starts making excuses that last night he behaved too stupidly and rudely, so he asks to forgive him for all the words and actions he did yesterday. The innkeeper takes his speech, noting that he decided to make amends with his own work. Such zeal was admirable, but still he thought that this was not enough. Didn't he forget something important? He admits that it was he who took the knife from the kitchen, so that as soon as possible he would return it to the madam. In the kitchen, the owner is surprised to see that she has a very sincere heart, because this is what she wants to hear from him. The young man says he has a request to the hotel owner. After that, she asked him to pray for her too, from which the owner was surprised because he did not know that he was a believer. Thinking that he was one of the strongest believers, then the hotel owner answered him that he would definitely pray for him. He believed that this whole accident situation must have exerted a great deal of pressure. Besides, considering what happened, they weren't good enough to him. The young man let him know that everything was completely in order, and if they needed anything else, he asked them to tell him about it. He will definitely try to solve it. All that must be done now is to remain calm, so as not to disturb this madman. While continuing to pilot the pile, he keeps wondering if there is any semblance of connection with the outside world, since Romy takes the boat, which is the only way to get off the island. He began to think about what exactly he was doing now. He heard the expression, "Romy, ungrateful girl." Where did he go crazy for who could turn to him? Now if he runs away? The innkeeper asked him where he was and if he had visited this place again, which his father called the residence, or whatever he called it. The innkeeper kept standing and scolding his daughter several times. She begs him not to succumb to the influence of worldly temptations, and if he does not improve, he will do so, sure to go to hell. After that, he told that they would preach with him tonight. Romy walks near the young man and thanks him for having a refreshing journey. She walked in new clothes with a bag of new things to her room, from which the young man got crazier because he promised to come back and save her. At that moment, she remembers how whole family laughed at her when they talked about Romy's escape, and then she understands why this whole family is laughing at her. He rushes to Romy with a question. What happened to him? It turned out that the reason why he wanted to leave the island was because he wanted to do normal shopping and attend youth registration. She takes out a few things from her package and hands them to the young man, saying that she made this gift especially for him. After that, she shows him that she has no right to scream and yell at him, otherwise he will be punished. At that moment, he remembers the belongings of a murdered young couple he found in the guest house, and they are all covered in blood, from which a lump appeared in his throat, and said that this would not happen again in the future. As soon as the young man returns to his house, he notices a large note that Yumi left him, where she asks him to build her a small wooden cupboard of a certain dimension. Young man sees this message, throws his toolbox, after which he tears this paper and calls them bastards, because once he gets out of this island, they will all go to jail soon. After he crumpled the paper and threw it somewhere in the treehouse, he cried. She cried and did not understand how she could end up in such a hell. He draws attention to the gift Romy gave him and does not understand how he can believe it. So he took it and tore up all the presents. The wrapping inside the gift box is a bottle with some substance called herbicide. It helps fight weeds in this garden and the next. The brand that produced this herbicide has become popular due to the frequent cases of poisoning resulting from accidental or intentional ingestion. Realizing that Romy gave him the herbicide, he starts laughing hysterically and loudly, repeating the word aloud, because he doesn't believe that he was given weed killer. Then he suddenly stood up and threw this bottle down, and the herbicide seeped through the cap and dripped onto the floor. He called Romy a fucking bitch because he probably wanted him to drink it and die. At that point, he forced himself to calm down, because what if he gave him a knot of herbicide so he would drink it himself, but so that he poisons the whole family with his chemistry, and then they can escape? He started digging through the box, because he wanted to find something definite. He saw somewhere. When he dug through all this rubbish, then he took out a little black enema that he had poured herbicide into. 10 minutes later, he was near the hotel, where he knocked, and the madam opened the door for him. Surprised by his appearance, he held out the kitchen knife he stole the first day he arrived on this island. She asks for forgiveness from him, and also says that she returns it, after which she bowed before him so that he would certainly believe in her good intentions. The madam replied that she would consider it only as a consequence of the injuries received as a result of the accident, and from now on she hoped that this would not happen again in the future, to which she certainly agreed and repeated that she was very sorry about this. Then she turned in the doorway and was about to leave, but he stopped her and asked her, "Where exactly is she going now?" Because if she headed to the kitchen, then she would want to help him. He entrusted her to clean the fish, and it turns out that cleaning fish is tiring, and also quite hard work. So he wondered how he would cope on his own. He was again surprised that cooking took so much effort. But the madam replied that this was her favorite pastime, because there was nothing else to do here. The young man was trying his best to strike up a friendly conversation, and by that time he was already reaching into his pocket to add herbicide to their food. He asks if they often have guests. The woman answered quite often, and by that time the young man already wanted to send an enema with poison while cleaning the fish. But as soon as he imagined the poison family in front of him, he realized that he couldn't do this. At this time, the madam of the house noticed that he was helping her a lot, so she invited him to have dinner together for such a great effort. And at that moment, the atmosphere became very quiet. There was a very strange silence in the kitchen. He couldn't answer anything, which made the situation even more terrifying, with every second that seemed to drag on forever. After a while, the young man said that today he still doesn't feel well, so next time she will definitely accept his invitation to have dinner together. As soon as he finished cleaning the fish, he left the inn. Not sure what he was thinking when he wanted to add herbicide to everyone's food. At that moment, he realized that the island itself was driving him crazy. He returned to his treehouse, sat on the swing, and poured all the poison that had been collected in an enema. According to him, he made the right choice, and no matter how badly the damage was because it was wrong, he didn't know if there was any other way but to kill them. Maybe dinner's brilliant idea that popped into his head. He picked up the binoculars again and went into the house, where he started looking out the window, and it looked like they were all at the dinner table by now. So he rushed into the house towards one of the windows. He opened it and climbed inside. The young man found himself in the innkeeper's room, and most importantly, the cross and gun caught his attention, and he did not understand what this extraordinary combination meant. He was trying to find a phone somewhere in the room, but now he noticed that there was a laptop on the table by the chair that could give him a lot more information than a regular phone. He immediately rushed to the laptop and thought that if there was no password on the laptop, then he would immediately believe in God. So he started opening the laptop slowly, hoping there would be no password. He activates it, and the desktop lights up in front of him where there is no password for the laptop, so all he needs now is to have internet on this laptop. At this moment, he realized that the internet network was connected to the laptop, so he shouted glory to the gods and how cool God is now. Then it's paramount for him to decide who exactly he should contact. But at that moment, the floor creaked, as if someone then walked towards the room. The floor creak grew louder and louder, so the young man had to remain unaccounted for. Within seconds, the room door opened, and the hotel owner was standing in the doorway of the room. He came into the room, and for some reason looked around as if something embarrassed him, and at that moment, the young man was under the bed next to the hotel owner standing. He didn't understand why he was now in the room, as now was the perfect time for dinner. The owner suddenly and loudly said that the window was open, from which the young man made drops of sweat on his face. He came up to her and began to look around carefully. After that, he asked himself, did he open this window earlier? The young man under the bed panicked even more and even bit his hand in fear of not making a sound. After a while, the hotel owner lay down in his big chair and fell asleep. There was a Bible under his hand, and then the young man decided to get out from under the bed to get back to his laptop again. He restarted the laptop on the desktop, clicking the internet icon, but realized that there was no internet connection anymore. He started trying to click on the address bar with the cursor, but all of these were unsuccessful as it didn't click at all. Then he decided to go to favorites he has on his laptop. There is only one. Link in favorite with big smiley called Our Happy Family Today. The innkeeper started to wake up making sounds as if he was getting up soon, so the young man needed to hide again so he wouldn't be killed on the spot with this weapon. He lay down in his chair and started to get up, and at this time a young man who was very frightened hid behind the chair. The owner got up from his chair saying that time flies really fast. After that, he took off his belt from his trousers and went to Romy to teach him a lesson, which he surely would not forget. After a while, he left the room and slammed the door, and steps started away from this room, so that the young man heaved another sigh of relief. He rushed back to his laptop, went to his favorites, and clicked on the only link called Our Happy Family. Here he encounters a strange painting image in which a house is drawn, and the whole family is standing in front of it, and the sweet inscription of house is flaunted above. The only thing that confused the young man was that one of the characters drawn here had his face crossed out. He wondered if clothing-wise it wasn't the man he often saw swinging in front of his house, which made him sweat. After all, there is not a single explanation why they painted her face, because there is no explanation for this. He assumed that the whole family hated this man for some reason, and there seemed to be something hidden in the boy's face. Then he pressed it, and the whole screen turned off, as if the laptop was off at that moment. The young man did not understand what was happening and why the laptop went into sleep mode. He even thought for a moment. At that time, the electricity was turned off, but a moment later the laptop screen lit up and the story of 6 pigs appeared. It says that the first pig was smart and capable of killing anyone with just one finger. If she tries hard, she can make very beautiful bouquets. The third pig likes to bully others but can be a shield. The fourth has a deep dark side like a dark tunnel. The fifth pig is stupid, endlessly waiting for his lover, and the sixth is not very there. Young men don't understand what kind of fairy tale it is, and also what it's about because it makes so much sense here. But at that moment, a timer appears on the laptop, which means it counts down from 60 seconds. It is unclear what will happen after the countdown ends, which makes the young man even more terrified. When he saw everything that was happening right now, he took the Bible, opened it, and all the pages of this book were blank, so he tore off one of the pages to write down this whole story. After that, he rushed to find a pen, rummaged through the 3 drawers of the nearest dresser. Finally, he found it after that, armed with a piece of paper and a pen. He rushed to his laptop to write down this story. Currently, 28 seconds were already on the timer, and at this moment he truly believed that something very important was hidden behind these words. There was very little time left on the timer, but still need to write a bit, And when the last second is left, all the text is rewritten on a sheet of paper, and the laptop is turned off. He barely had time to write it all down, but he still didn't understand what it meant. So he picked up the laptop again and tried to turn it on, but no longer turns on. When he lifted the laptop to plug it into the power jack with the paper cable, the other cable strangely peeled off from the laptop cover, where there are pixels on the front side and the number 2 is written on the back side. That night, he returns to his treehouse and begins to build a cupboard, which Yumi asks him to, and as he is hammering one of the nails into the wooden piece of the cupboard, he hits his finger with the hammer, from which he screams and cowers in pain. After this fiasco, he lay on the floor and stared at the ceiling, then reached into one of his pockets and pulled out a note in which he had written the story of the 6 pigs. At that moment, he felt someone was watching him, exposing him. In this situation, as an idiot, he wondered who could leave. He reads the whole story again, but this doesn't make it any clearer, and why there was the first pig, this the second, and so on. Besides, he didn't understand what it meant he could kill with one finger, and when he said this, an insight came to him. Where did he jump from, and said that this could not be done? Then looked at his fingers, and once again said the sentence written on his piece of paper. Then he suddenly walked to the door and left the house, slamming it hard. He comes down the stairs, and seems like he understands the whole story. The clever pig can kill someone with just his fingers, referring to a famous Korean celebrity who committed suicide amidst online bullying. Then he started to think that every word was hiding underneath, so he found a reference to a bouquet of flowers and shot out a phrase as deep as a dark tunnel looking like an iron pipe. He beats a fool who waited forever for his lover. This is a reference to the mailbox he finds at the beginning. Place on the beach. Likes to bully others but can become a shield and then draw prisoners with huge weights with chains tied to their feet so they can't escape. As well as warriors, and chain letters made from small chains appeared on his head. So that another note is on the iron chain that lies just outside his treehouse, where the swing is hanging, and it turns out because on one of the chain rings, there is another note enclosed in it. He went to the chain and found this note, after which he took it out, and in front of it again it was a pixel image, and the reverse side contained the number 6 written. At that time, someone from behind uttered a congratulatory sentence from the young man's mana. He immediately felt sweat and cold behind. He stood up, this little boy whose face looked so scary. The young man decided to ask again who he was, but the boy only replied that from now on he was ready. This incomprehensible answer confused the young man, because he did not understand anything about what was happening. The boy pointed to his left pocket and asked to see what was there. The young man again did not immediately understand what this boy wanted from him, and reached into his left pocket with his hand. Somewhere in this pocket was his phone, and the boy said he had been lying in his left pocket all this time, and the young man never even checked this pocket. He took out the note and saw that the phone had a 6-digit password, and a note it lists exactly 6 pigs, which are symbols for each number. He found on this island, he again remembered the saying that the first pig was smart and capable of killing anyone with just one finger, and it was this note he took from under the laptop cover where the number 2 was written on the back. He entered the first digit of the passcode by pressing the second 2. If he tries hard, he can make a beautiful bouquet. He found this note on the back of an arrow bearing the number 9, so he entered it as the second number. In the third password, pig likes to bully others but can be a shield. He finds this note last in the swing chain, and behind this note is a 6, so he puts it in. All 3 of the 4 have a deep dark side that looks like a dark tunnel, and these records are found in metal pipes. This note had the number 3 on it, so he entered it as a character. Fourth in password, stupid 5th pig endlessly thirsty for his lover. This note refers to the mailbox where he lies, and the number 5 is written on the back of the sheet, so he also entered them, as the 5th and 6th didn't actually exist. So he, after a bit of thought, clicked on the 0 that best fit the description of what he was reading at the time. She unlocked her mobile and looked at her home profile. He entered, but what to expect next is really not caught here. He drew attention to the Photos app icon, so he clicked on it. In various albums with his photo unfolded in front of him, he goes to My Photo. There are some photos, flipped through it a bit and saw a photo in a military suit where Sun Jin Hyuk's name was written on his clothes. After which he happily exclaims that he finally recognized her name. He turned to the boy who was standing next to him the whole time and shared the joy. This was because now he knew at least her name. Then she clicked on the photo album called Food, and indeed there were various dishes of various cuisines. She concluded that she was still a gourmet. But while scrolling through the photos of the food, nothing else crossed his mind except that he recognized the name, no more useful information he could use in any way. At that moment he clicked on the last album called Photos from Memory, and there were a lot of photos in this album, 218 pieces. In one of the pics, she finds that she has a boyfriend. Then she starts scrolling further and admits that her boyfriend is so cute, and in all the pics it looks like they're doing nothing but hugging. She turns on some videos with her boyfriend running away from her with tears of fear and panic showing on her face, and tears flowing from her eyes. Then he holds his neck in this video and starts to choke. From what he was seeing, he was suddenly flipping through the album to the next video where they appear to be on a hike with his friends, and when one of his friends stands in front of a cliff, he comes over and pushes him into the abyss. In the next video, he is in a taxi, where at one point he takes out a hammer and brutally beats the taxi driver. He was very surprised by the video. He then flipped through the video again, and could no longer contain his panic. He screams what all that means, and what kind of video is in the next video. He saw a man tied to a chair, where with a slight movement of his hand, he shot him with a half-gun clip, from which the man fell down along with the chair. As soon as he finished watching the video, he rushed to the boy to explain everything that happened in this video. But the boy just smiled contentedly and kept looking at her. At this moment, Sung Jin starts to think that this all happened to him because he was drugged. After this sentence, he started laughing out loud, and his laughter was already more like hysterics. The boys at this time ordered him to pull himself together, calling him by his name. After that, he asks how long he will last, while this family will taunt him. He asks if she wants to escape from this island. But Sung Jin was silent. His face still showed confusion. Then the boy's face started to distort into a very evil and scary look. After that, he ordered Jin's son to show everyone that who is really the boss of this island.